This is a test. Good evening, everyone, and we'd like to welcome you to our September 23rd City of Palatka Commission meeting. At this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask Pastor Mulberry if you could lead us in the invocation and the pledge at this time. So if everyone would please stand.
Father, again, we thank you for how good you have been all day long. You brought us together once again. And certainly, God, we say thank you. We pray for your divine guidance and for your wisdom, for your insight, and for all that is necessary to lead this city forward. We pray, God, for the leadership of this diocese, that you will continue to bless your people, Lord. Touch us now. Lift us up. Encourage our hearts. Inspire us to do those things that will please you and bring you glory. It is in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tammy McCaskill.
Here.
Commissioner Will Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Justin Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Borum.
Present.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
All present and accounted for, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes from our September 2nd workshop, our commission meeting on September 2nd, and our workshop and commission meeting on September 9th?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
It's motion and second to approve items 2A through D. Is there any unreadiness?
Question.
Questions called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public recognition and presentations. First up is a proclamation for Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, September 15th through October 15th, 2021. This is a new proclamation for us. At this time, do we have anyone who's on the Zoom call or with us? I got Miss Mary Garcia, who's here with us. And also, do I have Trooper Vega present with us on Zoom? So he was going to try to make it. So we'll go ahead and present the proclamation. At this time, the proclamation reads as follows.
Whereas Hispanic Latino Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the rich cultural traditions and honor the significant achievements of our Hispanic and Latino American communities. And whereas Hispanics make up the largest ethnic minority group in the country, the fastest growing minority community, and make valuable contributions in business, industry, government, education, the sciences, arts, and faith. And whereas brave Hispanics served with distinction in military conflicts since the Revolutionary War and continue to defend our country today as members of the armed forces, bringing honor and earning the nation's gratitude for their service and sacrifice. And whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans have made enormous contributions to our diverse society by sharing their talents, culture, traditions, and their deep connection to family values and a commitment to faith and a desire to live the American dream. And now, therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby designate September 15th, 2021 to October 15th, 2021 as Hispano-Latino Heritage Month in the City of Palatka, and encourage all residents to celebrate the heritage and achievements of the Hispanic and Latino Americans and recognize their contributions to our nation. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Palatka this 23rd day of September in the year of our Lord 2021, nunc pro tunc to September 15th, 2021.
So move.
Motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Let's give a round of applause. Anything you want to say, Ms. Garcia?
Well, I just have to say, as a Palatka County Latino girl, on my dad's side of the family, I appreciate it, and it's very grateful for this proclamation.
Definitely, thank you. And so today is an opportunity for us really to start to expand what we look at. Oftentimes in America, we see things as black and white. And I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to start to look at all hues, look at all races, all creeds, all ethnicities as we begin to move forward. Cultural diversity is one of the greatest strengths that we're going to have in this community. The ability to understand, empathize, and grow, I think in various ways will allow us to all really build. And so we're just glad that, again, we're on the cutting edge of moving Putnam forward in so many ways. And so again, thank you for being the first recipient.
Thank you so much for being part of our racial issues study circles. I think it's not black and white. All of us supporting each other. That's critical and important.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission? Thank you. Round of applause, please. Next up, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We got a few representatives. I saw Dr. Caravella come in. Doc, will you come forward at this time? Also, do I have any representatives from the hospital with us today? And so if you would come forward, and if you could just all kind of join us right here at the front of the dais.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. Yeah.
In the front. You're always front and center, Ms. Deb. So the proclamation reads as follows.
Thank you. Whereas in the United States, about 1 in 8 women and 1 in 800 men will develop breast cancer in his or her lifetime, according to the National Cancer Institute. And whereas when breast cancer is caught early, treatments such as hormone replacement therapy work best, and survival rates increase with recommended mammograms and breast cancer screenings that play an essential role in early detection. And whereas this month, as we honor those lost to breast cancer, let us join with the loved ones who celebrate their memory and the patients who battle this disease every day, as well as our nation's advocates, medical researchers, and healthcare providers to renew our commitment to better prevent, detect, and treat breast cancer. And whereas during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we recognize all those who know the anguish of breast cancer and extend our heartfelt concern for all who share the pain and difficulties of this disease. Now, therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby endorse, declare, and designate the month of October 2021 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we designate the 16th day of October 2021 as Mammography Day in the City of Palatka, and hereby encourage the citizens of Palatka, private businesses, nonprofit organizations, and all other interested groups to join in activities that will increase awareness and what we can do to prevent and control breast cancer. And in witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the City of Palatka this 23rd day of September in the year of our Lord, 2021.
So move. Second.
This motion on the floor in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Just a round of applause. At this time where we present the proclamations, I also ask if you want to give any words. And so if you can maybe step to the podium and do it, that way they can hear you on Zoom as well.
As representatives of the hospital, we want to thank the City Commission for this wonderful proclamation. Thank you very much for recognizing the efforts of everyone in this community who provides diagnosis and detection of breast cancer. And we want that to be early. So encourage all of your family members, your friends, your neighbors to have mammography early. As the mother of a active breast cancer patient right now, trust me, it's worth it to detect it early. So please be aware of that. Thank you very much for recognizing this. And Dr. Caravella is very much involved in this whole progress of breast cancer and treatment.
So thank you, city officials and members of the public. Well, I will say that, every week I see quite a few breast cancer patients. And the best part of the job is, like today, there were 2 ladies who were probably treated about 5 years ago. and it's time to fire them because they're doing great. And so when I walk into the room, one, I'm lazy, but I really don't check which side we treated. And then when I'm examining the patient, I try and figure out which side was it. And if I can't tell, that means you've done a good job, right? And then pretty soon the patients catch on what I'm doing. This joker doesn't really know which side he treated. But the good news is that's the point, right? That nowadays we are catching breast cancer so early. Thank you for these kind of efforts. That clearly it's a good thing. I bumped into Mayor Hill the other day in the hospital car lot. He was conducting business. And so he reminded me, I said, yep, sure, I'm going to be there. Then he said, you have to say a few words. And I stopped there on my tracks. That part I didn't know. So I, of course, didn't prepare anything. But what I will say that I've realized after working in this community for several years, we are seeing more and more patients who are diagnosed early in the game, and that translates to cure. So one thing that is notable that 30, 40 years ago, most women, unfortunately, who developed breast cancer ended up having a mastectomy. Now, in Putnam, I would hazard to say that we are over 85 to close, I don't want to say 90%, but I think over 85% of women with breast cancer come early, so they don't have to lose their breast, don't have to have a mastectomy. So we really made a lot of positive headway in this disease. So, and thank you for these efforts to advertise this. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the three of you, there's not enough thank yous in the world for the commitment that you have to this community. With blessed hands and blessed hearts, we just appreciate the fact that we have people like you in the room in Putnam County who truly care about our citizens. And so again, thank you both, all three of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, we want to continue to thank you guys. And this is a good segue into what is coming up in October 23rd. Vanchelle Alford, she's having a straight out of Pinktober walk and run to help support breast cancer. Is October 23rd at 8:30. So it would be great to have you all there in support, as well as many people in the audience and people in YouTube land. So I just want to at least share that.
And so definitely we appreciate everyone who has a program or ceremony that helps raise awareness. And October is our month to make sure that we continually push awareness for breast cancer as well as for domestic violence. And we definitely appreciate those efforts. On a segue also, Mark Dooley, CEO of the hospital, we had a farewell ceremony for him on yesterday. He served us for 3.5 years, but it seems like much longer because he came into the community and he poured his heart and soul into Palatka. And so we're going to miss him. He's created some big shoes to fill in a very short period of time. But again, we want to say to Mark, thank you for just choosing Putnam for the period of time that you were here. And so let's give him a round of applause. Next up, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Lee Conley, and also our own victim advocate, Ms. Shirley Edwards. Wherever you want to stand, I can't tell you what to do. Proclamation reads as follows.
Whereas domestic violence is a crime that impacts all citizens of Putnam County and an impact is wide ranging, taking a dramatic toll on the criminal justice system, law enforcement, the healthcare community, and society as a whole. Each year in Putnam County, an estimated 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men are victims of domestic violence, which translates to 13,100 individuals affected in our county based on recent data. And whereas it is vital for our community to support the victims of domestic violence and assist with their grave financial, physical, and psychological losses, to impose legal sanctions against perpetrators of personal violence, and to help the batterers unlearn their abusive behavior. And whereas the Lee Conley House is the only certified domestic violence center in Putnam County, providing a 24-hour hotline, shelter, and other needed services and counseling to victims and their families, and has been awarded certification through Florida's Department of Children and Families. And whereas the Palatka City Commission endorses and supports all programs sponsored by the Lee Conley House and its mission to provide shelter and support services to victims of domestic violence and their families, thereby assisting in the elimination of domestic violence in our community. Now, therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, the mayor of the city of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby proclaim that the month of October 2021 is hereby designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Palatka, and urge all citizens to participate in planned socially distanced activities benefiting the Lee Conley House and its mission to provide shelter and support services to victims of domestic violence and their families, and support its goal of creating a community with zero tolerance of domestic violence. In witness whereof, I have hereunto caused my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the city of Palatka this 23rd day of September in the year of our Lord, 2021.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Give a round of applause for Lee Conley. Davis, any words? And-
Make sure the mic is on.
It should be still on.
Hi, my name is Keisha Davis. I am the program director at the Lee Conley House. As I said, it is only certified domestic violence shelter in Putnam County. Today is an honor to stand here alongside my fellow advocates and acknowledging October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Spreading awareness is a big part of advocacy, which is why October is a big month for us. We cannot put an end to domestic violence unless we talk about it, unless we address the issues impacting our community, and unless we work together to place preventative tools and resources in place for our families. Because your family is our family, and it takes a village to keep us all safe and loved, which is why we are so grateful to have the support of the community and our community partners as we do not do this work alone. We would like to give thanks to our fellow advocates at the Palatka Police Department, Ms. Shirley Ellis, who's here with us today, the Putnam County Sheriff's Office, the Putnam County Health Department, and the State's Attorney's Office for always being a phone call away. Advocacy is something that is near and dear to all of our hearts, and we could not do this without you. Also, a heartfelt thank you to the Lee Conley House Board of Directors and the City of Palatka's Mayor and Commissioners for always supporting us in our mission to put an end to domestic violence, as it has no place in our community. We would like to ask you all to join us in our efforts to spread awareness every Friday in the month of October by wearing purple to show our support for survivors everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you very much for this honor every year. It's very important, and I do appreciate the acknowledgement of what we're trying to do in victim services at the Palatka Police Department. I also wanted to take this opportunity to invite you all on the 23rd as well. We're going to be acknowledging and honoring survivors of domestic violence. Every year we do the Fall Festival, and it's a lot of things to do for kids, but it's also serious to acknowledge survivors of domestic violence. So please come out on the 23rd of October. We're also going to have a tailgate contest. Unlike in the past, we've done the barbecue contest, but now we're going to step it up a little higher, have a tailgate challenge is what I'm calling it. And also there's going to be a motorcycle show and a car show, and we'll be down on the riverfront. So you're all invited. And again, I need to definitely urge you to be totally aware of what's going around you in your neighborhoods, your friendships, and elsewhere, because we have had increased numbers over the past couple of years. Again, thank you so very much for this honor.
Thank you.
Again, it's always a pleasure to see the ladies of Lee Conley House here as well. Kind of the satellite on the north side satellite office is kind of inside joke. But in all honesty, when we look at what's going on with the pandemic and we see the mental health challenges that people are facing, we're seeing an uptick in domestic violence and violent crimes and things of that nature. So we have to be conscious overall within our own communities, within our homes, within our daily lives, to make sure that we see signs of domestic violence, that we see changes in behavior, and that we are willing to step up and report these things, and also be able to provide support to agencies like Leah Conley House so that we don't continually have the uptick in our community. One of the things that we want to do is truly stamp out domestic violence in our community. And this is the opportunity for us in October to paint this community pink and purple. And so again, that's one of the things that we want to do. Any other comments from the commission?
Yes, I did on the comments that the mayor made, but I see it here in the stats where it's 1 in 8 men are also impacted by domestic violence. So does the Lee Conley House also, is there any place for a man to go if they've been impacted by domestic violence? All right, I'm just asking just in case if something happened to me.
Can she actually come back up to the mic so that it's caught with the recorder?
Ms. Davis, can you repeat it at the mic so that it can be, so that everyone else will hear it as well, and it'll be on the recording?
While our shelter does not house men, where we only house women and children, however, we do provide services to men throughout outreach, and we would help them relocate and help with any other services that we have.
And I think to add, to show support of Domestic Violence Month, if we take pictures or anyone takes pictures, they can share on Facebook, is it? You said hashtag Pledge Purple Fridays? Okay.
Again, hashtag Pledge Purple Fridays. So let's look forward to painting Putnam pink and purple throughout the month of October. And thank you very much. Next up, Chief. We're here for Fire Prevention Week, October 3rd through 9th. Can I get the gentlemen in the blue uniforms to come forward at this time? And also the gray. I thought I was gonna leave you out, huh?
Mayor, Commissioners.
You guys.
Good evening, Mayor, good evening, Commissioners, citizens. We thank you for taking the time to recognize this and proclaim fire safety throughout the city. We would be remiss if we didn't thank our partners with St. Gobain and CertainTeed, also the Bingo Palace, and all the other smaller donors that give throughout the year to help us fund to give out coloring books and hats to the children. We'd also like to encourage the daycares and the elementary schools to go ahead and start scheduling. 386-329-0120. Ask for the shift commander, let them know what size gathering you need, and we'll bring the stuff out and bring the trucks and let them walk through and see what happens, and we'll talk about fire safety while we're there. We thank you again for taking this time.
The proclamation, we have a proclamation as well.
Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Home fires kill more than 2,770 people in the United States in 2019, according to the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, and fire departments in the United States responded to 339,500 home fires. And whereas newer homes are built with lightweight materials that burn faster, and many of today's products and furnishings produce toxic smoke when burning, making it impossible to see and breathe, residents should identify places like the kitchen in their home where fires can start and eliminate any and all hazards. And whereas properly installed and working smoke alarms in every sleeping room and outside sleeping areas cut the risk in half of dying in reported home fires. Residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan that includes a drawn map of each level of the home, showing all doors and windows at least twice each year with family members and visitors, are more prepared and more likely to survive a home fire. And whereas Palatka's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. Palaka's residents, including our children, should be taught how to escape on their own and to take personal steps to increase their safety in home fires, homes, and once out, should stay out, never going back inside for people, pets, or possessions. And whereas the 2021 fire prevention theme, Learn the Sounds of Fire Safety, highlights this year's focus on recognizing the different sounds smoke and carbon monoxide alarms can make and what to do when alarm sounds. Now therefore, I, Terrell L. Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby proclaim the week of October 3rd through the 9th as Fire Prevention Week throughout the city of Palatka. And we urge all citizens to learn the sounds of fire safety for Fire Prevention Week 2021 and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Palaka's Fire and Emergency Services. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused to be affixed the seal of the city of Palatka this 23rd day of September in the year of our Lord 2021.
So move.
A second.
Motion and second from the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Let's give it up for our first responders. Guys, there's not enough ways for us to say thank you to you for your sacrifices, for the work that you do in this community, for the work that you do for our kids in this community. And we just wanted to let you know that we appreciate you. We know oftentimes it's a thankless job, but we definitely appreciate the work that you do, your commitment to this community. And as we commemorate 20 years of 9/11, we want to make sure that we take time out to say thank you to our first responders for all that you do and the sacrifices that you make, putting life above all on a daily basis. So guys, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Student of the month for September is canceled. We've got a whole bunch of folks on Zoom who are cutting their cameras off right now. But we're going to go ahead and celebrate our students right now. So we're up for Student of the Month at this time. And so that's where we're moving into. We're getting ready for our Student of the Month. And so next up, we have Commissioner Campbell, who's going to give us some words before we get started.
To the students, I commend you, we commend you on a job well done, and we ask that you continue to be the leaders and the shining stars that you are, not only this year, but in the years to come. Congratulations, and thank you so much for showing up in the classroom.
Thank you, Commissioner Campbell, for your words. Next up is our Student of the Month. Starting out with just a quick disclaimer, I will butcher at least 3 names every time we do this, so blame it on my head and not my heart. First up, from Browning Pierce Elementary School, Odell Willis. Children's Reading Center Charter School, Jaden Bush. Hillcrest Academy, Reagan McNett. James A. Long Elementary School, Chloe Leonard. Kelly Smith Elementary School, Adeline Edwards. Mellon Learning Center, Mahi Rathi, pre-kindergarten. I'll get that right, Commissioner. Look, I'm doing better. Next up, William D. Mosley Elementary School, Leah Canty. Palatka Junior Senior High School, Charles Bryce Bernard. Pinal Baptist Academy, Keegan Horn. Putnam Academy of Arts and Sciences, Melissa Thomas. She looks familiar. From Putnam Edge High School, Eric Brown. So that concludes our Student of the Month for the month of September. We have a bunch of new schools with new names together. So this is an opportunity for our first at the newly named schools. But again, to our students, first of all, we want to say thank you to the parents because it truly takes a village. The parents, the family members who are all assembled on Zoom and watching on YouTube. Thank you for putting forth the work into our children so that they can continually be successful, because it truly takes a village to raise a child. And so let's give a round of applause to all the parents. Also watching and assembled around this dais as well are the educators who on a daily basis sacrifice themselves. They're often overworked and underpaid and underthanked. And so again, we just want to thank you for all that you pour into our youth, for the sacrifices that you make, and for your commitment to excellence. And so again, thanks to all the educators. And finally, to our students, we are truly excited about all that you're doing. It's the beginning of the school year. It's been a crazy 2 years, and you guys are still doing great things. And we want you to just continually push forward through the pandemic and everything else, because you are truly the leaders of the future for our schools and for this community. And so I want to leave you with something that we've been saying for the last 40 years in Miss Green's 3rd grade class. And we started every day out by saying, I am somebody. If my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, I know I can achieve it, because I am somebody. You guys are somebody special. You're destined for greatness. We're proud of you and we love you at the city of Palatka. And so again, we just want to thank you and salute you for a wonderful job. Let's give it up for our students. Commissioner McCaskill, as we talk about Student of the Month, we've got, your school has a very different setup this year, and we're going to include 2 names for the 2 schools. Can you just talk about your position at the school quickly and the breakdown of the school? So we'll have 2 names for the school coming up in our next Student of the Month.
And actually and thank you, Mayor, for that and this opportunity. I am currently the assistant principal at Mellon Learning Center. And Mellon Learning Center is a combination school. It has K-12 students with severe disability or special needs, and it has the pre-K learning center for all the pre-K centers in the central location. So with that being said, we always try to identify, because it's 2 separate entities at one center, and we're asking that we identify both entities during Student of the Month, the pre-K side as well as the K-12 side.
Look, so we're always glad the more kids we can celebrate, the better. And so again, thank you for your work at the Mellon Learning Center, as well as your commitment to our youth. And so we will have 2 categories from Mellon coming up. Next up, public comments. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Anyone here for public comment, please fill out a yellow speaker's card in the back of the room. You can speak during general public comment, or you can also speak based on an item on the agenda that you wish to have, and you just have to mark it on there. As you come to the podium, please give your name and address so that we'll have it for the record. And now we'll open the floor for public comment. If there's anyone here for public comment, you can come forward at this time, fill out your card. Also, you can put general comments in the YouTube chat and we will just see them there. And if it's anything that we can respond to, we'll be fine. And if it's not there, then just give us a call at a later date. You can also use 386-329-0100 extension 0 for your comments. So those are your 2 primary functions, 386-329-0100 extension 0, or you can come forward to the podium at this time. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to the consent agenda. For this meeting, we have 4 items on the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that you wish to have removed at this time?
Motion to accept items A through D.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda as written. Is there any unreadiness at this time? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. I just want to make sure that I recognize Mr. Andy Harts. If you could just come forward at this time. And just for the public, Mr. Harts was item B on the agenda. We approved the extension of the golf course lease and the golf course franchise agreement. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about some of the major accomplishments that have gone on at the golf course over the last few years and what your vision is as we move forward.
Well, good evening. It's Andy Harts, 145 Brittany Lane, Palm Coast, Florida, 32137. The last 5 years, we've made a lot of gains. We've done really well with junior golf, attracted a lot of tournaments. We're pretty much the junior golf kings of Florida. We do more junior golf tournaments. We're going to start growing some of those. The azaleas have gotten big. We've had record crowds through the COVID and all the other stuff. We haven't slowed down a bit. So it's been good. Last 5 years, we've redone a couple of greens. We're in the process of redoing the clubhouse, the outside, we're tearing out all the rotten wood, fixed the roof, painting it, painted the cart barn. So little projects here and there. The next 8 years, we hope to get the greens redone. In 2025 will be the 100-year anniversary of the golf course, and our goal is to get all of the greens redone, have a big 100-year anniversary celebration. So got plans on doing that, some air conditioning work, general maintenance around the clubhouse, but just keep moving forward. But things are good and it's busy.
There's a nice ranking that you had for the golf course.
Yeah, out of all the municipal courses in the country, I think we were 29 last year out of over 500 of them. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll do better. We'll keep moving up ranks. We'll get there.
And so I just wanted you to come forward to give some information. Not many years ago, we were bleeding money at the golf course, for lack of any other term. We are very proud of your leadership. We're glad to have you as a part of this community and a partner with the city of Palatka, because it's truly becoming more fruitful every year. And it's an opportunity. You really engage children from all different walks of life, teaching them the game of golf and partnering with recreation and PAL and various organizations throughout this community. And we just appreciate the work that you do. And we're glad to have you on board for another 8 years.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Anyway,
Thank you.
any other comments from the commission?
Again, I did all the same comments as the mayor, but again, coming in 2015, the golf course was sinking a lot of money into it. And I know I wasn't a big fan of it at that time. And so we were basically funding the entire thing and we were losing money. So we had to come up with some strategy in terms of, we came up with the PPP and worked with Don Holmes and a number of other people. And we made the numbers work and we're in a lot better place now. So I just thank him for that partnership and look forward to continue to working with him.
Anyone else? Again, thank you, Andy. Next up, item number 6, adopt resolution 2021 R126, salary schedule, pay classification, and staff salary study recommendation.
A resolution of the city of Palatka, Florida, adopting the city salary schedule, pay classification and evaluation committee salary study survey recommendation, and providing for scrivener's errors.
So move.
Second.
It's motion on the floor in a second. We'll now open the floor. Before we open the floor for public hearing, we'll go ahead and have the presentation. Got Mr. Masters with us again.
Sir, I'm on the line.
Welcome. Welcome again, sir.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Commissioners, for your time in this process. It's been a several-week journey to get here, so thank you for your questions. And again, for your time in getting us to this kind of final state. As a result of the budget workshops and the initial presentation, I'm here to present to you the final recommendation for your consideration. And just to recap, rather than move back through the methodology, Reward Advisory Group completed a market survey of your peers as part of this process. We administered a questionnaire to the employees to understand the jobs that they perform. And we constructed with that data a pay plan that puts the city in a position that's competitive with the market, addresses compression, and addresses the city's objectives in terms of $13 an hour, et cetera. So I thought I'd jump to slide 7 if we could, please.
Turn them up a little bit, please.
What was that?
Just wanted you turned up. We couldn't hear you, so you had them turn the mic up. You're good. You can proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. So on slide 7, this slide again should look somewhat familiar, but as part of this process, you'll remember that we discussed a variety of best practice implementation options throughout our workshops. And today we're presenting for your consideration again a recommendation that is supported by city's leadership team and addresses many of the goals and objectives of the city. And if you remember back early on, 2 of the recommendations that we presented included an option 2, which was a model based around class date parity, in which we addressed compression, as well as a model 5, in which we addressed city's concerns and objectives in terms of pay for those employees below $13 an hour. And so on slide 7 now, what you'll see is an option titled staff recommendation, which is essentially a hybrid of those 2 options. And that's the option in red there. In this option, the criteria that we included bringing all city employees to a minimum of $13 an hour, ensuring a minimum of a 2% increase, and also, again, bringing in that model 2 option where we address things like compression and class date parity in terms of the number of years an employee has spent in their role. Of course, part of that option initially and still remains in the staff recommendation, a cap of 10%. On this slide also, you'll see the cost. We've calculated out. So we've modeled this employee by employee, totals $382,000. That's an annualized number that includes benefits burden as well. So I'll pause there for a moment if you wish and take any questions. And then I was just going to jump to slide 16, which included our 4 additional recommendations.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move to 16.
Okay, excellent. All right, on slide 16, these recommendations were also presented previously. I just wanted to re-highlight them in terms of 4 recommendations that came out of the study. Recommendation number 1 being to implement an annual merit-based compensation program where salary increases each year are at least partially based on employee performance. One point of clarity that I'll make from the last time around is that the intent here was an effective date for 2022, meaning the measurement period would be January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022 for the merit period versus doing it this year on top of the study recommendations we just discussed on slide 7. Recommendation 2 was to adjust the compensation structure annually based on national cost of living indexes. So as part of our recommendation on slide 7, we also have proposed a pay schedule and pay grade slotting for the positions within the city in the appendix. And what we mean with recommendation 2 is that each year, just to keep that pay scale up to market and competitive with market, as well as address things like minimum wage increases that we're seeing in the state of Florida and federally, that the city should be looking at that pay structure and adjusting somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 to 3% on an annual basis is typically where those cost of living adjustments land. Recommendation 3, we proposed, I believe it was 18 job title changes as part of this, just so that those job titles reflect the roles and responsibilities of the position. Those are also included in the appendix. And then finally, recommendation 4 was to revise the policy manual to align with state and federal requirements as well as best practice that we see in terms of HR policies, et cetera.
Any questions based? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I was just going to add that I'd be happy to answer any particular questions about the study or the methodology.
Any questions from the commission at this point?
Commissioner Jones here. I have a question, sir. On the recommendation number 3, the adopted job title changes to better reflect the roles and responsibilities. Along with that, I was looking in the packet and I wanted to kind of have a visual of some of the job titles change. And I know you're saying about the roles, but it didn't include anything about education level, training, or anything of that nature. And I know times past, we've had some circumstances where a person may have been in a department and maybe the only person left in that department and have been promoted because of that fact, not that they had the competencies or training or experience or the education level. When you did this survey, was that included or any of those factors included at all, or just the specific job titles and responsibility?
Yeah, in terms of going to the market and collecting kind of an apples to apples comparison on pay, we do use all the available information to us. So it's not a title to title comparison. It's also a job description to job description comparison, as well as if we have information from that questionnaire that we administered, we take that to consideration as well. So just to answer your question, we do look in terms of job to job at the details of the job when we make that comparison.
As detailed as this report is in the recommendations, I fail to see that included, nor have I seen the questionnaire. Just a point that I wanted to make. And I had an issue with us realigning job titles with roles that, you know, the responsibilities are there and maybe similar, but because of the difference in pay, I want to know what really drove the differences in pay, and could that have been a factor? That was that question on that one. Second question I have is, in this packet, it also, well, I'll get to the next part when you get there, I guess. And it's about the, with us Palatka being in the pay ranges of at least 93% of the market, and the city actual pay is 99% of the market. I just wanted a better clarification of, it's a little confusing.
Yep, absolutely. And just to address your point on the job descriptions, it's very well possible that the job description or the position questionnaire that we receive still, even with that information, doesn't accurately reflect the roles and responsibilities of the job as intended, or the certifications, licenses, et cetera. So if that is the case, then it's possible that a mismatch is made, right, between job duties at the city and job duties out at your peer organizations. And then in terms of addressing, I think you were referencing slide 5, is that correct? Regarding 93% of market?
Yes, sir. And just so that I could clearly articulate my concern and give an example, an operations manager with the city of Palatka is different from an operations manager with I think I used Walmart last time, or some other private entity. And so I just think the skill level and the education level is a little different. Would you concur with that or not?
Yeah, I would agree with that example for sure. And what we do when we go to market to make those matches is we look for, and this is industry standard in terms of compensation HR, we look for a 70% match or better in terms of the job duties, the roles and responsibilities, the education experience, licenses, et cetera. Oftentimes the job's not going to be identical, right? One job at an organization might have a few extra tasks that at your organization, they do not. So you might not ever achieve that perfect match, but we're looking for that 70% plus threshold. And another way to look at it too, when we go out is if someone's going out to get a job and gain employment, they're going to be looking for a role that best fits their competencies. It might not be an exact match. So if you think about it, what are the roles that, you know, an operations manager at the city of Palatka is going to go out and look at? And in your example, that's correct. It's probably very different. But in the case of other cities, we're likely going to find a job that's comparable at that level in terms of hierarchy, at that level within the organization, et cetera, that gives us a pretty good match and market indicator.
Anything else, Commissioner Jones?
I think he was gonna
So
expound on it. Go back, please, to the last slide. About the 93% and 99%. He was gonna explain that.
So
yes, sir. So just the last point on that in terms of the cuts. So what we're referencing there is, again, if we go back to some of our discussions earlier on, we did 2 cuts. We looked at an all peer cut, meaning every single peer that was identified, whether it be St. Augustine Beach, whether it be City of Jacksonville, et cetera. When we did that comparison, the City of Palatka was 85% of market in terms of the range comparison and 92% of market in terms of employee actual pay at those organizations. So slightly below market, 8 to 15%, depending on which data point you're looking at. The bullet highlighted in red that you're referencing was strictly a revenue population cut. So from that pool of all peers, we eliminated any peer that was not similar to the City of Palatka in terms of revenue size, as well as population served size. And when we do that, the City of Palatka is slightly more competitive than comparing it to the all peer cut. So the 93% of market simply says when we compare the range for, let's say, an administrative assistant at the city to the range for an administrative assistant out on the market, City of Palatka is about 7% behind. And then in terms of actual pay, so when we then take the City of Palatka's actual pay, what we're actually paying employees, and compare it to the average actual pay for the people in that same role across your peer organizations, we're at 99% of market. And that's expected when you take a revenue / population cut in terms of getting closer alignment to the market. But one of the dangers there is that you're eliminating some peers that you may have very real, competition with in terms of your immediate local market. One of those being City of St. Augustine Beach, for example.
Any other questions?
I got a final. My final question to you is, as after the staff presented to me yesterday, was going along with the salary and the salary recommendations. However, having an issue with the grade and the grade assignment and restructuring of the titles, could we move forward with the pay structure with the same pay scale that we have now? Is that possible? Providing the raises, but not going along with the titles. Without changing the titles, leaving the titles as is without changing the pay grade scale at this time, even because some of this stuff is phases, and it says phase what we're going to do in phase 2, as far as explaining the approach that's more the phase approach that you talked about earlier. I'm not making sense.
Yeah, the job title changes themselves, yes, you can move forward without. In terms of reclassing roles, that's simply a retitling exercise, with the exception of the one role that I pointed out. But in terms of the actual implementation, if we move forward with the existing ranges and roles, I mean, I guess the short answer is no. The reason being is this modeling, all of it that we've done is predicated on aligning to a pay grade that's competitive with the market, and then using that as a reference point, right, to do our modeling, particularly in like an option 2, where we're looking at class state parity to place folks within those ranges based on their years of experience and tenure. So if we do want to revisit ranges, you know, and just stick with the existing city ranges, I mean, I guess what we would need to do is just look at, to your point, and what I mentioned earlier, is a phased approach to the pay plan itself as well. So there's not a hard black and white answer in terms of yes or no, but some of the modeling is predicated on the existing salary structure.
Any further questions? Any follow-up, Commissioner?
But he said no, then he said it was not in black and no black and white answer.
Any other questions from the commission after hearing the dialogue? Concerns from Commissioner Jones? So I want to point out one thing, and Ms. Jones, Ms. Shank, and Mr. Holmes, we talked a little bit about this today as we went back through and we reviewed as we reviewed the study and looked at a couple different places in there. We saw a few places in there where at the end of the day, it seems as though shoring up some of the day-to-day responsibilities, even some positions, and even down to some of those positions that are paid for from more than one department. There was a need to kind of clean up some of those pieces and then bring it back, I think, in a cleaner format to the commission as we truly delved into, you know, what some of those jobs were doing. I think the logical thing for us to do at this point is to approve the recommendations, except for the recommendation on part 3 with the job changes, understanding what the grade changes are. I think what the grade changes are on that. We talked about going through specifically looking at some of those jobs and what the grades were and pulling it together. But then we saw a few places where there was some ambiguity on how one job differs from another. But I think it's an opportunity for us to truly go back in to bring back to the commission at a later date after additional research, a true job title amendment for those jobs, those 18 or so jobs that we were looking to change. How many jobs was it, Ms. Jones or Ms. Shank, that we were looking to actually do job title changes on? I know we identify, I would say
18 or 19.
but we identified maybe a couple more that had some questions on it, and what we can do is we can adopt this and then bring back in the next month or a few weeks. I think the complete breakdown of what the new job descriptions are, so that everything kind of meshes together, because there were a couple places ambiguity that were in there. There were some job changes that I necessarily wasn't comfortable with moving forward based on the recommendations that were in place. But there are also some where we saw folks who were, for example, in positions that would be titled differently, whether it was a supervisor or a foreman versus that title language, where I think it was just a little bit more time needed, I think, from the staff level to start to really dig in the weeds as to how it was reported as opposed to how it's written. And I think those are some of the places. And then we saw some places where, you know, status changes were necessary, or even some places where jobs had changed status, but hadn't necessarily made it hadn't made it to the org chart in the same way. And so that was kind of digging deep into the layers of the weeds to get to where we needed to be to see those things. And it was a matter of going back in and calling for some specifications. Chief Shaw helped us out with some as related to job transfers and how it happened, because some of it historically happened prior to anybody on the commission being a part of what was going on, or even administration being a part of what was there. And so there had to be a historical context put in place to see how that stuff took place, because we saw some that took place 10 years ago. And, it's only because you've got the institutional knowledge within leadership that you're able to even see it. So I think that as it relates to number 3, we got time to make sure we get it right. But as to where we are, I think people are more concerned with what they're going to get paid at this point, as opposed to what their job description completely is. And so I don't want to delay cutting checks for the purposes of us just trying to the key and the rest of the key details when the foundations of the job are going to be the same.
So I would like to entertain a motion, unless somebody else got a comment.
So you
Comment?
here in the comments, I'll give everybody an opportunity to make sure that we cover that. If there's anything from staff that you want to follow up on, Mr. Holmes, anybody, if you want to make any statements concerning it, and the commission as well.
No, sir. I mean, you're correct. There were about 18 job titles, I believe, that were identified as being perhaps in need of being tweaked. So we can accomplish that in short order. Now that we've identified the 18, I think we can accomplish the tweaking in short order. So with that having been said, we'll certainly try to implement whatever the directive is from the commission.
Any other comments from the commission? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation for the pay scale. However, the pay scale only, not the job reclassifications at this time, or the pay grade changes at this time. So what I'm saying is you're not going to change the pay grade or the title at this time. That's where we're saying we're going to phase in the rest of the stuff.
Accept staff recommendation with the exception of what?
With the exception of that, yes,
So
absolutely.
there's a motion to accept staff's recommendation excluding recommendation 3.
You second.
Second.
There's a second on the floor by Commissioner Campbell.
For clarification, some of the salary adjustments are going to depend upon
The pay ranges.
the classifications and the, and the job titles, unless I'm mistaken. I mean, all I'm looking for is clarification. If you have somebody who's in a job and the job is the same under the new category, then I understand exactly what you're saying. If we have somebody who is a lead at the water plants, and they're a lead under the new schedule also, but we don't want to adopt the entire new classification roster, then it won't be a problem to adjust the pay of that lead. But if you've got somebody whose job classification changed, or their pay rate or scale changed, then their raise was going to be dependent upon that change in the pay rate. So if they went to whatever it was, G9, and the G9 range is more than what they're making right now, if you don't adopt the G9, that the job pay rate, the salary rate, then I don't guess they get an increase. Am I mistaken about that?
Well, we could always retro that, couldn't we?
Well, but just go ahead. Am I mistaken first? Because
No, and that's exactly what Tom elaborated on, that was his answer. No, you can't move forward without that piece.
It's a dependency.
But when you look at, no.
But what staff is recommending is not proposed title changes for clarification.
It's the classification. I know what it is. So, and that's what I'm saying, is put a halt on that until we look at it, until we could, and I think we should take an active role in that as commission, because again, just the example that I use, an operations manager pretty much would be second in command in some entities. Some businesses, I guess we use the automotive industry. Operations manager at GM would pretty much run things. Operations manager here is pretty much.
Probably third and what?
Yeah,
like third,
well,
fourth.
It's gonna vary. based
it's
on
just
what it
it's
is.
a title, and they're not at third in command here. I think we need to clean it, like you say, clean it up, and it needs to come back before us so that we could kind of like
But I think-
clarify those things.
So I think a lot of what's cleaned up is how the titles are put into place. Is with some of the grades, there has been some adjustments on grades on a lot of these positions. Even looking down to like where the language changes, whether it's someone who does purely an administrative job as opposed to as opposed to being a coordinator of sorts. And so those things have been adjusted where they're dealing with admin 2 positions versus something different or to those capacities. I think all those things have kind of put things into a better format. But I think the reality of it is the majority of this product is strong. The majority of this product is strong. There are very few places where I think we find ourselves in a position where we got to worry about being scaled too high. And I think that's the key. Is there are places I don't think we're going to be scaled up, and the places where we thought that we could possibly be scaled up, they've already been scaled down.
Right. To your point, Mayor, there will be nobody affected with their raise that's going to go outside of the pay grade, whether they be promoted to it or not. They won't go outside of pay grade. There are some? How many? We talked the other day and it was one person.
That was one as we went through the list. As we talked about in that meeting, I made it very clear that I would have to do my due diligence to go through every single one of those positions.
And that's what I'm requesting, that you do your due diligence and we get that done so that we will actually have accuracy. A lot of these reports, I mentioned it, we catch the accuracy after the fact. And that's why I don't want to move that fast. I want to get the employees the money now. Don't hold that up. And I still feel that we could move forward, and it's not going to delay someone from getting a job title. But that title does carry money with it. So I'd rather give all the employees the money at this point and then correct anything that's, because we don't have a number right now. We don't have 18 people that's going to be affected. If you would tell me that, I'll say, well, that's significant. But the other day, it was just one person that we identified. And I'll give you a prime example of what I'm talking about right now. I won't give that example, but I think I put it out there, my concerns. And when we hire people at a level, and it come back and bite us because that person's competency is not the level of that job, we shouldn't just go ahead and just say, okay, now because you're here already, we're gonna deem you this title and this money, because we're not gonna be able to undo that. But I don't want to hold up money, but I do want to hold up those titles and responsibilities and the qualifications. I want to do that. And so
Clarification, I mean,
from this point forward, that's all I have to say.
so this is the commission's call to make, so I'm not arguing a point. I just want to make sure I understand. And we probably need to take an example. So for instance, the salaries that we have proposed, remember, you are giving everybody, nobody's going to be making less than 13. That component is easy enough to accomplish. You can raise everybody up to 13 without worrying about pay grades or job titles. That's easy. You could give everybody 2% without worrying about job titles or pay grades. That's easy too. But where I'm having a hard time understanding what you're proposing when you say go ahead and give them the money, but not adopt the salary.
Let's use the general service director.
Sir?
Next to the last line.
That's-
Use that one as the example.
Well, and that, sorry, I do want to interrupt. That is something that we're not proposing. We weren't proposing the title changes to be in effect. And I'll give you a great example. is my own staff, the account clerk too. Whereas we're saying finance specialist too. When my staff and approved by me went through their job qualifications in the market, they are compared to a finance specialist too. So strictly based on the job that they are doing and the qualifications behind that job, that is the pay range. Where it sits at under our current pay range without my due diligence, basically, if we give them that increase under what staff has proposed, they may not be in that range. So that's where I'm saying, and they have to go in hand in hand.
So,
So
and
what-
again, I'm just trying to get clarification. I'm not arguing one way or the other. So let's take the example you gave, Ms. Shank. You said, general administration?
Admin, account clerk too.
Right, let me finish, please. General administration, account clerk 2, that would go to finance specialist 2, correct?
Right.
And the new pay grade would be G13, is that correct? And the range for that finance specialist 2 would be 46 to a total of 72 with a mid-range of 59.
Right.
All right, now my question is, right now, what is that account clerk 2 making?
Ms. Jones. She'll have to pull it up. I don't have it in front of me.
She on Zoom? Is she on Zoom?
She's probably pulling it up.
Yes, I'm here.
Pulling it up right now? Okay. So can you pull that for us, Ms. Jones?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Currently, they are at 331 as the minimum to a max of 47,013.
All right, so make sure we're comparing apples to apples. So that's an account clerk 2.
Yes, we're on account clerk 2.
Account clerk 2 is at a minimum of 33,000.
30,000, 331 is the minimum. 38,672 is the mid, 47,013 is the max.
Okay, so then the minimum of a financial specialist 2 at G13 is 46. Right now, that same position is 30,300 on minimum, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so obviously that's a $16,000 difference. However, we stated that under the proposal, they could not receive more than 10%. So even though that would be more than 10% from 30 to 46, that would be, sir?
Would that be correct?
They can't receive more than 10% though, correct?
That'd be a violation of the pay range, wouldn't it?
It would be something that, as I understand it, you're phasing up to. So in order for budgetary, now look, I'm just trying to make sure I understand and we all are on the same page, and then it's obviously a decision for the commission to make as to how you go forward. But my understanding is that the finance specialist 2 is 46. Right now, there are 30,000. That's a 6. So to take them to the minimum would be $16,000. Obviously, 16,000 compared to 30 is more than 50%, right? So we had capped any raise at 10% to avoid, for lack of a better term, sticker shock because of the budgetary concerns and us trying to bring something in that was palatable from a budgetary standpoint, with the idea that you'd go up to that range of 46 in phases. So my question simply is, if you don't adopt the new categories, I don't know. You've got a general admin account clerk 2 who's making 30,000. As I recall, the range that she gave, it was 30,000 to 38. So the maximum is below the minimum of the new structure.
Right.
And so how much, if someone's making right now, if they're making the base, let's say 30,300, how much raise do we give them immediately? You said, go ahead and give them the money now. How much money do we give them?
No, we wasn't. Based upon the 2% and the hybrid, Okay, so that's what so you're telling me right now, based upon the 2% of the hybrid, that clerk is gonna go from 30,000 to 40, 46?
No, what I told you was it was capped at 10%.
Right, so that should reflect that. That's not reflecting that. That's reflecting.
That's the range that ultimately that will be the schedule that, if I'm understanding it correctly, ultimately that is the salary range for G13. But we're not going to be able to bring them up to the salary range for G13 right now because, as you saw, we're coming in at substantially less than what was the amount that was budgeted for the raises at the last meeting. So that's why, look, this was a compromise, and no compromise gives anybody what they want completely. So the deal was cap the raises at 10%, even if based upon market, they should be getting a $16,000 range and they're making 30 now, 30,000, 60,000 raise, cap it. So if they're making 30 now and they're capped at a 10% raise, they're only going to 33. And that's how you ended up with the money savings that we have. But ultimately, in time, the idea would be to get them up to that salary range that you got there. Now, do I understand this correctly? So my question simply is, when you say give them the money now, but don't adopt either the pay grade scale or the job titles, I don't know how you implement that.
Because the finance director should be able to tell us right now that those numbers are not going to reflect exactly what these employees are going to get right now. So that's why I said there's no sense to put this out there and it don't correlate with it. You said sometime, and you're right, in time, in the face. But I think that we should review what those numbers are going to be and how we're going to get there. And again, don't do it and bring it to the commission and say, well, you guys had sat up there and okayed it and approved it, and it's going to come back and bite us. That's how I see it. But that's just my opinion, one person up here. And I think I said enough to bring it to the forefront for you can see it with your own eyes. And so make the decision based upon that. Because based upon that, that person is making more than our police officers starting out.
I got a question. Well, I mean, that's a good point. But my other question would be that we would have to adopt the model because those are reflected in the model. Those ranges are. The other question is that if we adopt that model and legally, what would we be bound to for that particular model that we adopted and have an individual working in that model? What would that look like from a legal standpoint?
Is that a question for me, Commissioner? I just want to be clear.
Go ahead.
That's what
I didn't do it this time.
That's gonna be a legal question because if we adopt that, and then if the hybrid model put them at no more than 10% of what they're currently making now to address that situation, then we would have a major issue adopting that model and then having a person working in that capacity. It wouldn't even fit within the financial structure because it's all dependent upon each other. So that's what I'm saying too. So
go ahead, Mr. Masters.
You, if I could,
respond, and then I'll let Counselor.
I'm not aware of. Yep. Okay, I'm sorry, Counselor, to interrupt. I was just going to mention that I'm not aware of any legal issues related to paying what we call undermen. What I've seen in many instances in the same exact situation in terms of phasing to a model is each year you try to work those employees up to the best of your ability as an organization until you're to that target operating range, right, for that role, because we know that range is market competitive. But that's my comment. Thank you.
Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. Masters. Thank you, Mayor. As Mr. Masters said, this is a phase-in approach. This is a report. These are suggestions. We have not issued any kind of written documentation telling any of the employees that they will be working in this pay range. This is a a phase. This is a model that we're working towards. And so as long as we stick to that, then we'll be fine.
When we adopt this tonight, we're adopting that document. Am I right or wrong?
You're adopting that document, but it's
As
subject
written.
to being phased into those
Right.
amounts, and that's the piece that's in there.
Right.
And so I agree with most of what you said, but not all of what you said. I think that because you have the ability to phase in, this is all done because, and most of it's done in anticipation of the fact that you're gonna have to get to a $15 minimum in a few years. And because you got to get to a $15 minimum, this is how it works. I've worked personally on jobs where we've been below the minimum on where the salary was, and the employer is not bound by law to put you above that amount. The recommended range is what the best efforts are going to be to try to get there. If it takes 2 years, 4 years, or whatever to get to that point, you go. But you can't break the bank trying to get somebody to a proposed range just for the purposes of getting there. The reality of it is everybody that's sitting up on that chart today is working at the range they're on right now. And what we're doing is making best efforts to try to get them somewhere within what's recommended from a salary survey and adopt something that will provide a greater benefit in the future for people. The reality is we can stay at the same, we can keep our scales where they are, give raises based upon what's been recommended in here, use this as a perspective range of where we need to get to, never say this is an actual range, and you still be in compliance, because that's just what it is. All it is a roadmap to try to get you to where you want to be. And if we use the roadmap to build us up in the future, it's fine. If we don't make it there and we fall a little short, it's fine. That's where you are, but it doesn't trigger any employment clauses to my understanding. And that's going to put us in a position where we're saying, hey, we can't afford to pay you what the medium range is, what the range is for your position at this time, but we're going to pay you as much as we can and try to keep you with a job.
May I speak, and not as a lawyer, but
you can't stop. You can't never speak as a lawyer.
the only way that I would see that you would have a legal issue would be if you applied a different rule in implementing the structure, i.e. we're applying the same rule to the structure of capping everybody's raise at 10%. So if you were going into a different pay grade based upon your job title, regardless of whether the minimum of the new title was 20 or 50, we're capping everything to a 10% raise. And then, as I indicated earlier, if the minimum of the new title is below 10%, then fine, you're going to get the minimum of the new title. So you're applying the same rule across the board to all employees. And from my perspective, that avoids any allegation of inequality in terms of the way you're trying to approach the plan. But as I said, there isn't anything that's, if you had all the money in the world, then you know, all of these imaginative approaches wouldn't be necessary, but we all know we don't. And so what we try to do is prepare a model that would take the city forward for the future. And as the mayor said, it would be a roadmap and a goal, but it recognizes the budgetary restraints that you have right now. Instead of just throwing some money out there and at some arbitrary rate and saying, well, we've given you some money, but we don't know where we're going to go next year, the year after, this would at least provide you with some, at least in our opinion, it would provide you with something in the future that you could aspire to in terms of coming up with an equitable pay scale. So that was our goal. That's what we tried to do.
So what's your timeline to implement it, city manager? I mean, we have the document, so I guess we'll shoot for October 1st to try to implement the raise, I would think. But this document is
budgeted for the next fiscal year. Yes, sir. In answer to your question, the budget you adopted was actually offered. It provided for more money than is required to implement the pay structure that we have proposed.
the pay structure. But what about
the pay structure
this
including,
document?
and the pay structure is based upon the pay grades. That's what I said. I've not understood how you could do one without the other. Now, maybe I'm just not getting it, but I don't understand how you can adopt a pay structure that's based upon new pay grades without adopting the new pay grades. The caveat to that is, yes, we understand we won't be able to fully fund some of the pay grade changes, but those are the ones we've capped at 10. I don't understand how, if your salary structure and your raises are based upon the new pay grades with limitations, I don't know how you adopt a salary structure without recognizing the pay grade structure. But and that maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe somebody else is, and so be it. I mean,
You're gonna ask these employees that say, well, I saw where I should be making X amount of dollars, and explain that to them later when they're not getting those X amount of
I'd
dollars.
be happy to
I
explain
mean,
it,
I'm
just like
that's
I'm
not gonna
explaining
sit
it
well.
right now. We've come up with a solution that caps the raises at 10%. Taking the person who's making the 30,000 to 46, I think almost anyone would say that it may be what the market says you should be getting, but if you've been working for 30, I doubt that many people would expect a 50% raise for doing the same job. Even if you're trying to work them to a competitive market rate and range, I think most of them would be happy at a 10% raise. But again, maybe I'm speaking for people that I maybe shouldn't be speaking for.
Any further comments, Commissioner Jones?
No, sir, Mayor, I'm done.
Any further comments from anybody on the commission at this point?
Well, I just don't feel comfortable with
Saved by
it.
the bell.
It just bothers me the way what the research and the aligning of the things, and it's going to reflect on the commission in terms of when we adopt this and we're looking at something, we want to clean things up, and then we're still going into it where we're adopting something, we max it out at 10%. But that particular grade, again, I don't want to be the dead horse, but that's the only thing that's bothering me. And I don't know how many we have in our city like that, and I don't know how long it'll take to look at it. I mean, well, how much time does it take to kind of go through it to kind of figure out how many people will be impacted in that respect?
You actually have a listing. I don't know if Lauren has it available there. You actually have a listing of the percent raise that each person will be getting. And that ranges from 2 to 10%. I don't know if we have it here, but we looked at it today in some depth, and we've looked at it before in some depth. So we do have that listing of what the percent of raise each person will be getting. And more of the raises are lower than the 10%. I think what was the number that was in excess of? Can you get it real quick?
That was in excess of what?
Sir?
The number that was in excess of 10?
Right, the number that was going to be in excess of 10%. We're having to cap down 2%. I don't remember the numbers. You don't get that right now.
Mayor Hill, I'm being advised that they didn't hear Manager Holmes.
They'll be okay. All right.
Linda Fuller and the people watching on Zoom.
Okay. Well, tell him when we come back, he'll repeat himself. We're going to stand in recess for 5 minutes. order. We're gonna go to the share screen. All right. So as we reconvene, there was a question of where we were as it relates to the conversation was as it relates to adoption of the grades versus adoption of the name changes. And I guess for the purposes of trying to understand with direction from the commission, it probably for benefit of staff, are we more concerned with grade or are we more concerned with name, whether we adopt a name change today as a commission? So Commissioner Campbell, you're more concerned with the name changes. Commissioner Jones, you're concerned with grade and name change? Commissioner Borum?
Yes.
Grade and name changes, but the other question that I had was that if their duties, mainly I think it will require more money if you had additional duties. Now that would be correct, right? If you were getting additional duties.
As to where, you're saying as
In
to
the
salary,
current
the grade
role,
increases?
In the current role. As it is compared to I'm just trying to get to what would qualify a person if their job title change. Because generally when your job title change, you get additional duties, correct?
But the recommendation for the job title change, and correct me, Mr. Masters, if I'm wrong, it was based upon the information that you receive as to what were the duties being performed by the individuals on a daily basis. And based on the information that you received from supervisors and the individuals, you came up with these recommendations for the change in the job titles and classifications, right?
That is correct. Yes, Mayor.
So it came from the questionnaire, the information that they receive as it relates to duties and jobs performed by the people as they sit in those positions today. What was it most similar with when you looked at the control groups that were a part of the groups that were part of the responses?
Right. Well, I don't have a problem with that piece, but generally, if we adopt that and those people move into those particular roles, that wouldn't be a problem. But the thing with that is I wouldn't have a problem with that, but the only thing is generally when you have a job title change, generally you get the additional responsibilities. But
what he's trying to do with the recommendations is make the job title fit what they're already doing.
Correct.
Which
And that's
is,
what
I
the
think
basis
that's where the
of the survey
confusion
was.
may be.
Correct.
He's
Without
saying
changing
that
the description of
there's,
what it is.
so the only concern I had, my real concern was that, it wasn't necessarily the grade. We kind of everybody gone through their fine tooth comb and talked about grades of different positions there. And I think every commissioner got a chance to meet with staff and talk about what your concerns were, item by item, employee by employee, job description, job name by job name, as it relates to what's in place. I think there were certain job names and I'll say, I was not in agreement of a job name going from, we created general services and we went to assistant city manager. And so I wasn't in favor of that because we left that assistant city manager position open for a reason. And so the general services position was one where we were truly creating, it was a work in progress in many ways in creating what the true direction of the position was, so that we changed some responsibilities from public works to get into that spot. But I also think that when we looked at this thing, the tasks that were being performed on a daily basis were akin in many places to some of the tasks that were done by people with similar job titles in other areas. But so for example, we had already transitioned from naming the foreman position to calling it a supervisor, for example. And so those kind of positions change. We had some people who were doing administrative work who were called coordinators or something different, when admin 2 may have been the position name that was closest to where they were, which had the duties that they had in place. And at the end of the day, you can't expect Mr. Masters coming in here and looking at this thing in his view and taking questionnaires to truly understand what everybody does. Quite honestly, as a commission, because we're not doing day-to-day operational work, we're not going to truly know what some of these folks are doing on a day-to-day basis in the same level that your city manager or their supervisor may know. We can have a general idea. We can also have, we got an idea. We also have a place where we want to see that position go, but we're way in the weeds. We're way down as it relates to some of this stuff as to where we are. I mean, and I think the last thing is, as it relates to employment law, I would think that the lawyer would know more about employment law than most people. And I think that, you know, and also the employment specialist would know a lot more when he's done the studies. This thing is a target for where those salary ranges are targets as to where you want to be in the future as it relates to people with those positions. Nothing in that precludes you from being able to change a job description or a title for a job in the future. You're not completely locked in to having the street superintendent not have his job description change over the course of time and renegotiate his salary. That's something that can happen on a daily basis, whether his duties go up or down, whether he's promoted or demoted, all those things come in play. You just have to have reason as to how you deal with certain things and certain aspects that are there. But I think the reality of it is, when I look at this, I'm satisfied with where we are. We've touched on every employee in the city in some capacity. It may not be what we wanted to do, but it was doing something that's better than nothing. And so I can guarantee you, no matter how much money you put out there, you won't get 100% satisfaction. I can guarantee you, if you take money down, you're not going to get 100% satisfaction. People are not really, most of our employees ain't looking at that grade. They're looking at what's coming on that check. And I think that we've made a considerable effort, because there are very few communities, I think, that are going to go in and say, hey, we're going to throw almost $400,000 at making sure we try to take care of our folks. And so that's just the reality. We now have to phase in over the course of these next 5 years, or 4.5 years, getting ourselves to the state mandated minimum wage and putting ourselves in a position where we're competitive. Because the reality of it still is, you can go to Wendy's on 207 and make $17 an hour. We can't compete with that as a bottom range number right now, because we're a governmental agency which has a limited citizenship. So, but that roadmap will get us to a point where we can say, ideally, we want to be at 15. The state minimum wage is going up to $15, but we're still at 13, knowing that we're going to push it out as time goes on. And hopefully we're going to push above that. But that's only going to happen if we start to set the goals. I mean, quite honestly, the commission can easily say, we're going to adopt this pay grade schedule. It won't be in full effect until 26 as a part of what we're doing on this motion, but we're going to use this. If we get there sooner, then we get there sooner. But we understand that we're looking at it, because the other thing that happens is this. We've already said that we're going to look at the pay grade schedule on an annual basis and make adjustments based upon cost of living. So this document is going to change next year. So why are we caught up on what it looks like today? Because it's going to change in another year. Our position financially in the city is going to change in another year.
I'm good with it, Mayor. I've heard from our attorney. And again, like you say, it can be a phase-in approach, and it's just a title. And I understand that. So just as long as we understand and know that it's a title, I'm comfortable with moving forward with that.
I mean,
and with the, you know, with the pay ranges job names by 2026. So I guess there was a motion on the floor.
Yeah, there's still a motion on the floor, but I want to make sure we had the discussion. And it's not to dispel any concern. I think all the concerns are valid. And I think, I definitely think that Commissioner Jones has done his homework and his concerns are valid as it relates to where we are. I don't get it confused at all. I think the concerns are making sure that the city is not exposed to liability and to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do. And I think that those are valid concerns, no differently than your concerns, Commissioner. I think at the end of the day, the biggest frustration of all of this is these guys that sit in this room and that work for this community, they're held in limbo right now saying, well, what are you going to do? And I think we've made a commitment to do something. This, the way we've set it up, nobody really has a problem with what we do as far as implementing those raises immediately. The problem is in semantics, I think, more than anything else. And if we just go ahead and find that common ground and then take a little bit of time to deal with those concerns that we get from Commissioner Borum, Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner McCaskill, from myself and Commissioner Jones, then I think everybody will be satisfied as to where we are. And we create a roadmap for the future. It's nothing that we do is gonna make everybody 100% happy, but I think it's gonna make them happier than they were 2 months ago. And so that's my thought process. There's a motion on the floor. If there's no other discussion on the motion.
Mayor, I don't think you gave Commissioner McCaskill the opportunity to.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Campbell. I have clarification. I'm glad that we all do our homework, and that's the purpose of doing our homework and bringing our concerns before the commission so that we can have dialogue and get clarification. So I have no issues with staff recommendation. Actually, I'm good with staff recommendation. So thank you.
And may I ask for point of clarification, since I made the second, and there was clarity after the dialogue, how does that work?
So the motion is to accept the recommendations except for recommendation 3. And based on, can you put the recommendation chart back up?
Was that the one he made, man?
That was
Which was to adopt the job title
Okay, the one he
changes to
made.
better reflect the roles and responsibility of city jobs. 16.
So we don't see it. Here we go. To adopt job title changes to better reflect the roles and responsibilities. So the way the motion is right now, the only thing that we aren't adopting is job title changes, just the titles itself. So the motion to accept the recommendation excluding number 3.
Excluding number 3 and the guidelines,
He said the range.
the salary range. And you just said that we could, that document, we still own that document. But again, the implementation of it, that was my motion. So that's, it don't have to be.
As far as what my second, it was with recommendation to number 3. And
Right.
being after clarification and discussion, I want to know, how do I proceed if I no longer support the recommendation that is on there? Do I vote nay?
It goes from your vote.
Thank you.
That's the motion that's in place.
Thank you.
So what was clarify that motion?
Right.
Clarify that motion.
All right, so the motion on the floor right now, there's nothing else here. The motion is is to accept the recommendations -3 and minus the other, what were the other 2 pieces you had, Commissioner? And also the grades, correct?
Right.
So that was the motion on the floor. So the motion on the floor is to accept everything except for the job title changes and the grades. And so is there any further unreadiness as it relates to the motion? Questions called, all in favor, say aye. Oppose? Nay. Motion fails. Is there a new motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussions? Does that recommendation doesn't include changing the general services name? And I just think that, right. I think that So I think we shouldn't accept the job changes. That's my opinion as it relates to the motion. Everything else I support. Any other comments on this motion?
Well, that gonna be the amended motion.
It doesn't have to be amended. We're fine. It's already on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Nay.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. All right. So moving forward, we're going to item number 7 on the agenda, second public hearing, final millage and budget adoption fiscal year 2021-22 budget year. Resolution 2021 R127 setting fiscal year millage rate at 6.40 mils. The city of Palatka convenes the final public hearing on the city of Palatka fiscal year 2021-22 final millage rates and final budget as required by Florida statutes chapter 129 and 200. If anyone in our audience is here for the purpose of contesting their property value assessments, a petition for adjustment within the Value Adjustment Commission should have been filed by 5 p.m. Friday, September 14th, 2021, as stated on your trim notices sent via first-class mail by the property appraiser to each taxpayer on the property tax roll. This evening, we will take a number of actions relating to the adoption of the final millage rates and the budgets for fiscal year 2021-2022. For those in attendance this evening wishing to address the commission, citizens' comments will be taken following the overview of the final budget. The finance director will now present an explanation of the final and rollback millage rates.
Mayor and commissioners, the purpose of this, the second of 2 public hearings, is to adopt the final millage rates and budget for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022. It was properly advertised within the Palatka Daily News on Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. Rolled back millage rate is defined as the millage rate which, exclusive of new construction, additions to structure, deletions, and property added due to geographic boundary changes, will provide the same ad valorem tax revenue for each taxing authority as was levied during the prior year. The trim process requires that a notice of tax increase be advertised when the current year proposed aggregate millage rate exceeds the calculated aggregate rolled back millage rate, and the city has done this. Mr. Mayor and Commission, the total city final budget for fiscal year 2021-2022 is presented to you in the total of $57,247,873. This is the same tentative budget that was adopted by the commission during the first public hearing held on September 9th, 2021 within these chambers. I'm happy to answer any questions pertaining to the final millage rate or on the budget before you at this time.
So move.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Are there any general questions? When I would open the floor for public comment, are there any general questions or comments from the commission relating to the final millage rate or the final budget? Seeing no questions, I'd now like to invite the citizens to comment on the fiscal year 2021-22 millage rates and final budget. As a reminder, there will be an opportunity for the public to discuss the millage rates and the budget specifically as prospective resolutions are presented later in this proceeding. Please come forward to the podium if you wish to address the commission. We request that each speaker limit his comments to 3 minutes. The hearing will continue until everyone wishes to address the commission on this topic and they've had an opportunity to speak. So is there anyone here for public comment at this time? You can also use 386-329-0100, extension 0. Seeing no one else, we'll close public comment for this section at this time.
Mayor and Commissioners, the Truth in Millage legislation, or TRIM, requires the name of the taxing authority, the millage rate to be levied, the rolled back rate, and the percentage change over rolled back rate be publicly announced. Accordingly, for the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget, the aggregate proposed operating millage for the city of Palatka is 6.4000 mils, which is 17.74% greater than the rolled back rate of 5.4356 mils. Additionally, Florida statutes require the commission to adopt final millage rates prior to adopting the related budget. Before you is resolution number 2021-R-127, a resolution to adopt the final millage rates for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022, pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 200 Florida statutes, providing for conflicts and severability and providing for an effective date. This resolution includes the general fund millage rate of 6.4000, which is unchanged from fiscal year 21.
So move.
On the floor in a second. We'll now open the floor for discussion. Public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? The number is 386-329-0100, extension 0. You can also fill out the yellow speaker's card. Seeing no one here for public comment. Close public comment. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mayor and Commissioners, subsequent to the commission adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 final millage rates is to adopt the corresponding fiscal year 2021-2022 final budget. Before you is resolution number 2021-R-128, a resolution to adopt the final budget for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022 in the amount of $57,247,873 pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 200 Florida statutes, providing for conflicts and severability and providing for an effective date.
So move.
It's a motion on the floor in a second. Now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Again, you can fill out the yellow speaker's card, or you can go to 386-329-0100, extension 0. Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Mayor and Commissioners, staff requests permission from the commission authorizing the city manager to execute the ministerial documents required to complete the millage rate and budget adoption process required by Florida statute.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one here for public hearing, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. This concludes our public hearing.
Mayor and Commissioners, the city of Palatka has completed the annual budget adoption process for fiscal year 2021-2022. All requirements as mandated by Florida law have been met. Thank you.
This concludes the second and final public hearing to adopt fiscal year 2022 city budget as required by Florida law. Again, thank you, staff, Ms. Shank, Mr. Holmes, and all our various department heads for helping us put together this final budget for this fiscal year. It's been a labor of love. So. And again, thank you to the commission for all your input in helping make this budget a reality. Next up, item B, 7B, ordinance 2021-32, amending appendix A of the municipal code of the city of Palatka as it pertains to fees and other charges relating to chapter 50 parks and recreation, Chapter 54, planning, chapter 66, solid waste, chapter 74, subdivisions, chapter 86, utilities, chapter 94, zoning, chapter 95, administrative fees, second reading. Ms. Kratz.
Thank you. An ordinance number 2132, an ordinance of the city of Palatka, Florida, amending appendix A fee schedule of the municipal code of the city of Palatka as it pertains to fees and other charges relating to chapter 50 Parks and Recreation, chapter 54 planning, chapter 66 solid waste, chapter 74 subdivisions, chapter 86 utilities, chapter 94 zoning, chapter 95 administrative fees, providing for severability, providing for next effective date, and providing for scrivener's errors.
So move. Second.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner McCaskill, second by Commissioner Bohr. Now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? You can fill out a yellow speaker's card, or you can dial 386-3290-100 extension 0. Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion from the commission? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on, item number 8, citywide water line replacements, presentation of water line replacements.
Mayor, that's Mr. Griffith, who I hope is on Zoom with us.
I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Mayor, Commissioners, actually, Ms. Krantz, can you put up the 2 graphics that I emailed you earlier? Thank you. Perfect. Can you go to the table first, or the expense tracking sheet? Mayor, Commissioners, what we're looking at here is the estimated drawdown of the SRF award. As you're aware, we were awarded approximately $7.8 million with approximately $1.2 million in principal forgiveness. The 3 projects that are highlighted there are the current projects. The first one is actually contractually committed to TB Landmark. They have not started working in this area. Case in point, is what we want to talk about here tonight. The next 2 projects are specifically related to St. John's Avenue downtown and Palm to Mosley. We are contractually committed to completing the linear footage within those areas, either because of a grant requirement or because of a partnership with the county. The county is getting ready to bid that phase from Palm to Mosley. That's the total estimated cost of $1.2 million there. And Sonny, if you could flip back to the map real quick. I'm going to show these 3 areas for everyone. So the 3 areas that are outlined in the black dashed lines and the solid black line there, the one on the right with the pink is the downtown potable section. And the one in the green is alternate area. The one in the blue with the dotted black line is the St. John's Avenue, Palm to Mosley. Sonny, if you could flip back to the spreadsheet, please. So if you look down at the bottom, if we try and execute all of these projects, we would be 2.5 to the negative. Obviously, we can't do that. So what staff is proposing is one of 2 options for you. We do need to pull the trigger on the award of the downtown potable, which is the next item on the agenda. The award is for $2.9 million. The 3.1 here reflected is the total project cost, which includes some construction, inspection, and engineering. But we're proposing to do either a deduct and remove alternate A from TB Landmark's contract for the time being, and or move forward with ARPA funding to cover that additional cost, because we do need to reserve enough funding to replace the water line underneath St. John's Avenue, since we have that partnership with the county from Palm to Mosley. You'll notice I included some additional information here. The annual rate from SRF is very favorable. It's a 0.32%. And we've actually budgeted in excess of what the annual debt service cost is going to be. We've budgeted $403,000 and change every year since we started this project. The first payment hits this year. The annual debt service cost, once we realize the principal forgiveness, is only $351,000. So you do have some available budgeted debt. And we could go back to SRF in the next cycle, which would be next summer, and using the current rate, that equates to approximately a $2 million project. So if we're lucky enough to get a little bit higher principal forgiveness, in theory, you could cover the additional cost for Palatka Heights alternate A. We did wrap in the cost for potable in the next phase of St. John's Avenue, which is from Mosley back to the railroad tracks. And that section is in the Heights alternate A bid. Now that project with the county is slated to start in, Ms. Tucker, are you on the line right now? I believe it's July of 21 or 22.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And some other information here just for you is our current debt to income ratio. Now this is just using total annual revenues, and total annual utility debt payments is 18%. Mayor, commissioners, do you have any questions?
I mean, well, I was just trying to understand, you say Heights alternate A, okay, yeah, I see it. I was just looking at the other heights, but you got the height alternate, okay, I'm good. I was just trying to reference that, but you said what was highlighted. I'm good.
Okay. Mayor, would you like me to summarize what we're asking for again?
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
What's the estimated start time or date for the St. John's project that the city is responsible for? I've been asked that question.
Are you talking about the potable section for the section between Palm and Mosley, sir?
I'm talking about, yes.
Okay, yeah, because we have 3 different sections. So that one is expected to go to bid soon. We're going to bid at the same time as the county in what's called a goes with set, so that the contractors bidding on both of those are aware that there will be some coordination between the 2 parties. We don't have final bid dates yet, but I would expect that bid to go out this calendar year and probably be awarded toward the end of the calendar year and starting in the first of the next calendar year.
And I don't see St. John's to, Mosley to, is that 13th Street, 12th Street, railroad tracks?
Yeah, it's not broken out separately, but if you look at the table there, it's actually part of the Heights alternate A bid. It includes St. John's Avenue, Mosley to the railroad tracks.
Yeah, includes Mosley to the railroad track. Okay, yeah, right there.
Okay.
In the parentheses.
Yeah, so it's under construction. When does that start? It said construction.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. So if you're talking about the section of St. John's from Mosley to the railroad tracks, that actual construction or street construction won't start until probably later next year at the earliest. That is a DOT, Municipal Small County Outreach Program grant that we partnered with the county to secure. It was just awarded. But if you flip back to the map, you can kind of see that it is a small fraction of the entire project area. It's that section in green there. And obviously, pan over a little bit. Thank you, Ms. Krantz.
I hate to
It's
admit
that
this
top road in that area there.
I hate to admit this in public, but I'm colorblind. So could you guys, can you show me exactly the Palatka Heights area again?
You can't see
way up there.
Yeah, Sonny, can you hover the cursor above?
Yeah.
There you go, right there.
Okay. So is it, is that on the north side of Reed Street?
No, sir, that is on the south side of Reed. It's generally bounded by Reed on the north, Mosley on the west, 15th Street on the east, and then it goes all the way back down to Twig, which is the ravines.
If I'm looking at it right, I don't see anything other than the 2010 project that's on the north side of Reed that's scheduled.
If you'll flip back to the table. Yep, I'm glad you brought that up, sir. So those 2 projects on there, the northeast and northwest, Those comprise the entire north side, and we have submitted grant applications to DEO, and they're pending review.
Now, while we're on this, I just want to make this comment at this time that when I've reviewed it, I see a lot of things that's on that side of town always pending, always seeking the funding. So I would like to see some of those projects start to refine that funding and start seeing some construction going on. So I wanted to say that in the meeting when I when I didn't see anything pending, and I saw just seeking funding. I just want to say that. Mr. Griffin.
Yeah, we still have the ARPA funding.
Right.
That could also be utilized for that while those fundings are being sought. So that's just an option that the commission has to be able to vote on that too. So it's not, I don't think it's completely out. I mean, we could make some progress in the area if we so choose, because that's what it could be used for that purpose.
Yeah, so commissioners, just want you to be aware of what will happen. And ARPA is still on the table. So if you approve the award of the downtown potable on the next item, staff will need to bring back either a resolution approving the use of ARPA funds or a deduct to remove the necessary amount from the Heights alternate A bid. Now, you could further direct us that you want us to focus on a certain area within the Heights. Say, for instance, you want us to focus on the northern end so that we get St. John's Avenue done in preparation for the upcoming street reconstruction project, and leave the southern end of that for a later phase when we identify additional ARPA funds or SRF or utility or better place. Any further questions?
Do you think we should look at EDA as an opportunity for funding as well for some of the St. John's Avenue project, because we can tie that to economic development?
Ms. Tucker, I know that we've had some conversations with EDA. Do you want to give an update on that in regards to potable projects?
Yes, we've had several conversations with Mr. Viday over at EDA looking for possible grant opportunities. And the issue that Mr. Viday pointed out is that we need to have new industry coming into the area in order to score high enough to fund our potable or infrastructure initiatives. And so that's kind of where we are with EDA.
So what about on our downtown potables? You've got a significant number of new businesses that are coming into that area.
He's saying businesses that are going to create 50 to 250 jobs.
But you're gonna have, you've got some of those places are projecting over 100 jobs. And so you create the opportunity there. And then as you look at, and so you can possibly tie some of those into that same criteria. I think it may be an opportunity for us to have additional conversations with the individuals who are pushing some of those projects to see how we can tie them into the job creation aspect, because I know for a fact
would be
there are a couple
wonderful.
of those projects that are projecting over 100 jobs.
Mayor, we're more than committed to actually sit down with those individuals. They will need to actually commit on the grant application, similar to a DEO.
Right.
So if we need to have those conversations, we'll make ourselves available.
Did they tie those dollars in the same way DEO did, with something similar to the 35,000 per
It's not the
job
same
created?
calculation, but they still want the same type of commitment for job creation.
All right, similar concept. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? Jones? Got your hand on the button.
No, I've spoken. Well, with that opportunity,
Yes,
with new
ask
industry
your-
coming in, I could say that I noticed on the north side of Reed Street, Beck Automotive Group have, they had an old Pick and Save building that they quite sure that they're gonna have about 50 or more jobs they're created, and that should create opportunity to bring those dollars over there on that north side with the roads and everything. So definitely, I want you to look into that, Mr. Griffin.
So can we look at that? So that 5th to 14th Street project, is that tied into the northeast project?
Yes, sir. That's pretty much the entirety of the Northeast project. We do have a small run of water line included in the downtown section that runs up 11th Street over to Madison.
I know in some places we cut off at 6 when we did when the initial approach came from North Historic. So can we, so are you able to maybe do an update looking at that, maybe looking at piecemealing that project, a portion of it, and seeing what other opportunities exist north as well, so that we kind of get back to where we were as far as pushing out kind of the mirror image on the project, or seeing that there's some other places that we can pick up to kind of tie into the piece. We talked about,
yes,
because the last time we talked about 5th to 14th as being kind of a primary, as a primary approach to where we were.
Right.
Yeah, we would probably recommend continuing west, staying on the north of Maine, up to Dunham. It's about a 4-block run. So it could be basically, we could break it out into smaller phases. Yes, we would just have to identify some additional funding.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Didn't we say we were gonna utilize the ARPA funding for this project for St. John's Avenue downtown district potable? That's what I thought I heard.
He suggested it.
One of the options.
He suggested that there hasn't been a commitment. That's what he's looking for, for us to give direction as to how we move, how we push forward.
Okay, all right. Well, and that would be for the complete amount, because my understanding, he said that we have not been awarded the grant yet, or the funding.
Which funding?
For the St. John's Downtown District Potable. That's, I think then he requested to maybe pull funding from ARPA.
Right.
To fund that for 2.1 or something like that. So would it take the full 2.1 to do that particular project if we couldn't loop something else in? If we're going to pull from ARPA, that's what, we'll be voting on that, and maybe tie in some of that money to some of the things that we had talked about prior to 5th to 14 on that northeast area. I mean, because we're not using, we don't have to use all that funding. We could, like you say, if we could piece it in, we could still get some of that funding and tie in those projects while this is pending as well. I mean, it's not a vote tonight.
I agree with you, sir.
Any other comments from the commission? I think the other piece of it is, when you look at what we're getting interest rate wise from SRF, why wouldn't we go ahead? We've already budgeted for the debt service. Why wouldn't we take the additional $2 million and use that funding, leverage some of the ARPA funds so that we can get more bang for the buck at a time when the interest rates are low? And the ARPA funding should, in my estimation, should be used on projects that we wouldn't typically score well on in any other category from an infrastructure standpoint. Because at the end of the day, if you don't use your ARPA funding from the infrastructure side of the ARPA funding on those type projects that are not going to score well, whether it's from EDA or whomever, then you may never get this opportunity again to fund those from anything other than your general fund. Makes sense. And so that's just my thought. Any thoughts from the commission on that?
I echo that sentiment.
So that's the big piece. I mean, it's no different than what we did with the stormwater project at Booker Park when the money was there with water management, because that project would have never scored from the same cycle except for what was being proposed at that time. And if you don't start to look at those opportunities, then, you know, that's where I think you're going to miss out on this. You know, while we're doing that, of course, we're going to do stuff to try to better help our citizens, but we can better help our citizens as well if we can give them a better quality of life. And so you got to better look at all of it together, because the question is going to come up and is, are we doing something that's all encompassing for all of our citizens in the same way? Even when we look at areas like Rolling Hills, or we look, you know, we're looking further in those areas as it relates to the city past Palatka Heights. We still got to say, hey, we know there's newer infrastructure in those areas in most cases, but are there concerns in those areas in the same way? And so more than anything, Mr. Griffith, what are you seeking as far as?
So Mayor, really wanted everyone to be aware of the moving pieces here, and that with the upcoming award of the downtown potable tonight, and then the bidding and award of the St. John's Avenue Palm to Mosley with the county later this year, we're going to have to be prepared to make a decision, be it use ARPA funding, be it go back to SRF and see if they'll increase our award up to 9.8 million on the current terms, or delete scope from alternate A and delay the decision until next year.
Go ahead. So, Mr. Griffin, we just got that ARPA funding. So if we wouldn't have gotten the ARPA funding, how are we going to proceed?
So without the ARPA funding, it leaves you those two options. One is to go back to SRF right now and increase or request to increase the award amount up to what the debt service budgeted would cover, which would be approximately 9.8 million, which would cover everything but about $100,000 of what's shown on this sheet right now, or reduce scope from alternate A. And it would be basically cutting everything off the southern end of that and just doing what we need to get accomplished to complete the project with the county for the rest of the St. John's Avenue corridor in the next 2 years.
So again,
and it would be helpful, everyone, to kind of understand what you would like to see, be it a deduct in the next month to kind of delay the decision, be it a revisiting of the use of ARPA funds to complete the current phases, because we need to have some clarity as we move forward with the county on that next phase.
Got 5.2.
So yeah.
So we got 5.2. So again, and infrastructure is a major thing, and we can, you know, look at other things that we can do as it relates to some of the other approved spending that's approved.
So I also think it's necessary for us to give staff the direction to seek the other 2 million.
Yeah.
Is there any opposition to that?
No, I agree.
Commissioner Campbell? Commissioner McCaskill?
I agree.
Commissioner Borum?
Yes, sir.
So looks like by consensus, do we need a motion off of the presentation? We'll just I'll entertain a motion to authorize staff to seek the additional funding from SRF.
So move what Mayor just said.
No, you have to make. Yeah.
It's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Campbell.
Yeah.
There's a second by Commissioner Jones. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
And as it relates to the ability to move forward with ARPA funds, do we, sounds like is there a thought process to move the scope of this project? Do we want them to look at these projects, reduce the scope of any projects?
Well, I would say look at the east, northeast, and
any.
I request that we look at the areas that I requested. And you mentioned on the other side of Main Street, those areas. And if we have to use ARPA funds for that infrastructure project, because there's some roads over there in real bad shape and they need attention. And we keep putting that off. And I know we want a beautiful city, but we can't have half city looking good, another half looking not so good. So that's a recommendation for me right now. I don't know how the rest of the commission feel.
So it sounds like staff is more inclined to look at the Northwest. Northwest looks like Northwest should gain sooner priority than Northeast. Would you agree with that, Mr. Griffin? It's probably easier to look Northwest before Northeast based on some of the opportunities that may exist.
Actually, Mayor, I would probably take the approach of building off the existing trunk line on Dunham Street, which would impact both the Northeast and the Northwest. I will note that we need to probably give this a month or two. We just asked DEO for almost a total of $7 million for these two projects, and it's likely that they're going to fund those. It looks like we're going to score well.
So if they fund that, then that'll fund both projects, right?
Yes, sir.
Almost in entirety.
No, in entirety.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So hearing the recommendation from staff, we can just direct staff to look at these two projects, and then we'll see how we score on the DEO project as well. Does that give you more clarity?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else as it relates to these projects?
No, hoping we can share some good news in the next couple of months.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's move on to adopt resolution number 2021 R129 to award invitation to bid 2021-12 downtown potable to TB Landmark for a contract at $2,999,419.70.
A resolution authorizing award of ITB 2021-12 and execution of a contract with TB Landmark for St. John's Avenue downtown water main improvements project providing for scrivener's errors.
so move.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor in a second. We'll now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on, city manager administrative reports. Item A is a discussion of utility connections, annexation policies, and impact fees.
Mayor, Johnson has requested that this topic be put on the agenda for discussion. So under your section 9A, you see a summary. First page of the section notes that there have questions raised about when the moratorium. Well, first of all, the question that raised about whether or not we had a moratorium on impact fees. That is addressed in the first paragraph of the summary. Moratorium on impact fees, December 31, 2021. Meaning that if nothing happened after December 31, 2021, impact fees would go back into play. However, the existing impact fee structure was established in 2007. It is a 10-year attachment in its entirety. So in order to have any realistic assessment of your the actual reasonable cost of impact fees, you probably have to have a new impact fee study. Sorry. Did I mention I love Zoom? If you'll look at the very last pages of section 9A, and I mean, that's probably the last 3 or 4 pages, you'll see a summary It's entitled Notice of Imposition of Impact Fee Rates. That actually was passed in 2008, December 2008. And it gives the rates that were established and they've not been changed since that date. So you see that three-page summary, that provides for what the residential, commercial, industrial, and residential impact fee rates were. So that is a status update, so to speak, on impact fees. With regard to annexation, we had hoped very much to address the whole annexation issue as part of the strategic planning process. And as part of that process, we had hoped to, and have already mentioned it a couple of times, establish something akin to an urban service boundary in connection with the county or cooperation with the county, with an assumption that anything within that boundary would be something that we could reach economically in an economically feasible fashion with our infrastructure. Outside that boundary, perhaps not. And I say perhaps because there might be an annexation request that might be contiguous to existing property within the city, and because of its nature, it might have a positive impact on the city. But at least right now, our position has been that there's state statute that sets the parameters for when you can annex. The main criteria being it has to be contiguous to existing land that's in the city. And we have extended water outside the city limits based upon a out-of-city rate with an annexation agreement that states that if and when the property at issue becomes susceptible to annexation, they would annex in. And so with that, my understanding was the commissioner wanted to discuss pros and cons of annexation. So it's, I'll open it up at that.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you, City Manager, for putting that on the agenda. As you said, when this moratorium expires, we should be prepared to address it by having those up-to-date numbers, knowing what it's going to look like or what it should look like for if we want to move forward with imposing impact fees. And I asked on the last meeting to just for that project that we okayed, just to show the numbers of if we would have did the same project, just water and sewer services, we're just going to get those versus the impact of them being annexed in to the city. I wanted to see what those numbers would be. So that was my request, if you recall as well.
So if you, I mean, you're asking
We
what
asked
the
the-
cost of installation would be for the water and sewer, what revenue would be produced?
What, yes, what would be the impact, financial impact for the city? Because we were talking about, and I know that, I mean, the mayor talked on it, he had the points, but I had asked specifically, could, we see what those numbers would be like with the 144 units. And I guess we don't have that.
No,
But-
I don't have the revenue from 144 units specifically as to water and sewer only.
So
We can provide that information to you. I mean, that annexation request has already been granted, but as part of the continuation of this study, if you want to use that as an example, we'll get those numbers together for you.
yeah, but I definitely want you to move forward. My request is that you be moving forward to have the numbers of current rates for impact fees, because we're gonna, and you say in December anyway, we're gonna revisit this. We
It
should.
expires in December. It's
Right.
up to you as to whether we revisit it.
Right, so we need to have that information, so that's why I wanted it on the agenda, so that we could, as a commission, could, you could poll your constituents and see how they feel about it, so when it comes up, that we'll have that information. So that's just being proactive, and that's what I want.
So I think one thing about impact fees that you got to understand is the reason the impact fees were told in the first place is because of what happened with the market. I think that's the first thing. And so the purpose for suspending the impact fees was to try to use that as a catalyst to get people to come in and to build and develop within the community. The reality of it is that we were pretty stagnant during those periods. Now we're finding a point of activity, and it's been a conversation piece, I think, over the last 6 years. There's a point of activity, whether it's expansion of gas lines or expansion of water lines, replacement. People are finally coming into to Palatka because the other areas are saturated. And we're definitely in a position where you start to consider impact fees. But I think as you get to that point, you also got to understand that you want to have something going on when you start having that conversation. So you want to have building going on. You want to have the activity. And so the question becomes, with impact fees have been a hindrance to the overall budget of the individuals coming in with 144 units. And in choosing Palatka versus choosing some other Hawthorne, for example, where the number may have fit better. And so I think that the time is right for us to do the impact study. So I think looking at these numbers, the numbers are stale compared to where we were before. It may be time for us to update our impact study. And I think that we're getting to the point where we truly got to look at whether we're going to bring impact fees back or not. I think we may be slightly premature, maybe, within the next year, you'll see once you start to break ground on larger projects, and we're seeing consistent residential projects going up. But I think once you get the larger commercial activity, then it puts you in the perfect position to start to look at where you are. And it's all about timing, because the one thing you don't want to do is make a move that stops growth. And you want to be able to look at your growth and have smart growth. But I think the beauty of Palatka is because it was designed to be the capital of Florida, because it was designed as the first community of mass transportation, all your major thoroughfares exist. So unlike St. Augustine and some of the other places, we're not hamstrung. We're not locked in as it relates to roads for ingress and egress in the same manner. We've got, I think, a bit more latitude as it relates to how we move, but we just need to make sure that as we look at these issues concerning impact fees and development as a whole, I think it's a great question, and I think it's an opportunity for us to be educated on what other communities are doing as you begin to put impact fees in place. But the other part is when you start to see master plan communities come up and these things, you're looking at what other things are coming in to benefit communities as a whole. So you become educated as to all the tools you have in your toolbox, and then you just have to make a decision as to when you start to pull the trigger on. But I truly believe that we got to look at our rate structure because it hasn't been looked at in a while. And then once we go from looking at that rate structure, then you start to be advised on, is it the proper time to really pull the trigger on impacts, and is it going to stymie growth, or is it going to be something that people just aren't going to care about? At one point, I would say the beauty of Palatka was you could get land cheap, and land was plentiful, but the prices are going up, and we're seeing that over the last 3 years, over 150% change in value on properties. And so we just got to make sure that we're competitive. The good part about it is most of the other places around us are saturated, but the one thing that we want to do is make sure that, we continue to be a hometown for people, and we continue to be a place at the same time. But our citizens also want the amenities of the big city. So I agree, but I think it's time for us to start to at least commission an updated study as a starting point, and then creating a workshop where we sit and talk about how impacts and development can be used as a tool to help uplift your community.
Also, a great segue into this in its own on here about the utility connection, right? We want people to move in. We want to be flexible, as you said before, and that goes to changing the policy of annexation. So where a person could actually still, our policy now said that a person would have to annex in to receive the services. Is that correct? City Manager?
No.
We extend water lines outside the city limits, normally on a hardship scenario, but we do, and we have done it for businesses. We don't normally extend sewer lines outside the city limits unless annexation occurs.
Right. So I'm proposing that we look into being more flexible, allowing the water and sewer services, if we're gonna get revenue for them, and just change, for resident as well as commercial building.
You get revenue for them if they're in the city too.
Right.
So the component you lose is you don't get ad valorem taxes. So you
Now,
get-
again, I mean, I get what you're saying. You're right.
Sometimes you miss the franchise fee.
Huh?
And sometimes you miss franchise fees on some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, I don't see everybody running. There's a lot of people running to actually be on city services. We have a lot of requests for that. Maybe I'm over speaking. Maybe they don't want the services.
We had over the last couple of years, we've had an influx of people, particularly in that Hudson Avenue corridor, who had failed septic systems, whether it was drain fields or septic tanks, who decided to get on city sewer. Because there's a large enclave just to the west of Hudson Avenue, where we at one point, I think we had about 10 come in, within a short period of time. And you've got areas, for example, if you're going out, if you're going out St. John's and Palm, looking at the area by Palatka Ford, Green Road, all those areas,
all back in there.
all the people are asking to get on city sewer and to get those opportunities in there. We just kind of, we were sitting there, me and Mr. Holmes and Mr. Griffith were sitting there looking at that whole corridor as a septic to sewer opportunity. When you talk about the area from Palatka High School, that whole Palatka High School area, that's to the north, going all the way back to Palatka Ford and that whole area, there's a giant corridor of people, both commercial and residential, who would benefit starting from about the credit union on back, that would benefit from having sewer in that area. And it would be, I think, an economic driver for commercial properties as well. And so we're looking at, opportunities there with water management and also from an appropriation standpoint to look at those places as you start to expand out into Francis, where we've got service area with the fire department. Those same things happen. So there are a number of enclaves throughout the city that created. We've even looked at Palm, to go to what you're talking about. We've looked at how we could service Silver Lake Drive, the Silver Lake area, and be able to provide services there outside of the city. Because, I think we've all talked about it in our joint commission meetings with the county, that forced annexation may not necessarily be the way to go. That was the old school thought process. And we were looking at trying to figure out how to provide additional services. The gas authority is probably the best example in this county of how it works. And, just when it relates to water and sewer, we've been a bit old school in the manner in which we address some of those things. And I think that, a more progressive train of thought as it relates to forced annexation, and even getting the county on board as it relates to creating the urban service boundaries, creates the opportunity for us to become more efficient. At the end of the day, police and fire find themselves dealing with county calls a lot faster than the county does in areas that shouldn't necessarily be in the county. And so, but we're trying to communicate that. And I think when that happens, you clear up the registration, you clear up a whole bunch of confusion. I'm sure, Ms. Kitchen, you've had that conversation a million times about what color the garbage can is, or which agency's coming out, and how we start to deal with those things. It's a conversation that's been going on for decades, and we're trying to, the biggest part is getting consensus, and the road money is the biggest barrier to the whole thing. And so by being able to have those conversations, I think we get back to the points that you're talking about, so that you can create annexation policies and strategies from a commission standpoint that makes sense for everybody. And it helps you advance, because sometimes annexing the property is not necessarily the best opportunity, but in some cases, depending on the size of the project and what it's going to do from a tax revenue standpoint, it makes more sense. Any other comments from the commission? Any other things on your list?
I do know, I mean, you made a good point. And if this is going to expire at the end of this year, that's something that we certainly need to be looking at, because when it does expire, those these fees, they go in effect. So that's something that we really need to put on our calendar, our calendar within the next week or so. We got a short time window to, I guess, I don't know how long it takes for them to do the study and among other things, but when it expires, those fees will still be in effect. That means that if a builder comes in, then they will be subject to these, then we would have to either waive them or whatever. So that's an action that we're gonna have to get involved with.
It's just gonna get a lot more requests for concessions.
Hmm.
Just be a lot more requests for concessions on projects.
Right.
So, so do we want to get staff to bring us back some information on cost of impact studies?
Could we hear from the professional, the subject matter expert, Lisa Walsh, on that, just before we leave the subject?
Can you hear me? Thanks, Sunny. Commissioner Jones, I appreciate your confidence. Impact fee studies typically take anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on you have to go out and get a consultant, send it out to bid, that sort of thing. Impact fees, Mr. Hill has elucidated very well the possibilities of that could happen if you go ahead and institute them again, as far as its effect on development. It's also necessary, though, to run the city, to have the impact fees to create and increase your infrastructure, to provide those services for people, whether it's roads, parks and recreation, fire, police, law enforcement. I'm sorry, so it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. Water, sewer. Does that answer your question?
Schools and stormwater.
I'm sorry?
This is schools and stormwater, it's a lot of hospitals.
School impact fees are typically handled by the county.
Understand, but we do work with them too in terms of when we get the growth itself, it spawns that relationship. So, yeah.
Yes.
We have to we need to work with them like partners, so.
Yes, absolutely.
So great. That's a task that I'm quite sure Mr. Holmes gonna have you do, so that in 3 to 6 months, we'll have something to review. I just wanted your take on it because you were the expert in that.
Yeah,
area.
right. I'm the expert.
All right, you off the hook. You off the hook. But I thank you for your response.
Thank you.
Gotta order it and pay for it also. So. Okay, is that anything else on impact fees and annexation at this point? All right. Next up. Airport Advisory Board recommendation to allow private organizations to organize and stage the next fly-in. Mr. Yule. And car show.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. At the September Advisory Board meeting, a presentation was made by local aviation enthusiast Charlie Douglas, Douglas Law Firm here in town, in partnership with the helicopter business at Ormond Beach called Tomlinson Aviation. And at the end of the presentation, they have requested to take over the planning and staging of the next fly-in. The board was impressed with the experience of Tomlinson Aviation, connections in the aviation world, and felt confident to put it on safely. Mr. Tomlinson is the president of Tomlinson Aviation, and Mr. Douglas's passion to want to bring aviation, bring aviation to Palatka for the youth in the town. Charlie has enjoyed the fly-in and is just about to get his helicopter license. You know, he's a licensed pilot, and that's how he met Mr. Tomlinson. But the board's recommendation was to recommend the city commission approve this private organization and to take over the fly-in. After looking at what I put together in Nova's agenda, Ms. Thompson, Mr. Griffith thought that doing so was a little bit exclusive, could be viewed as exclusive use or authorization, you know, to one particular business. So we took, but you want to.
Council, go ahead and kind of explain
Well, the
the
airport,
legalities.
yes, the Airport Advisory Board.
We can't hear you.
Sorry, sir. I know you like that. The Airport Advisory Board voted that they did not want to sponsor the event this year. So we were recommending that it be considered as a special event and that they would apply for permission from the city to conduct the fly-in, the Douglas Tomlinson Group.
Right, and that we would vacate the calendar for that particular event, and they would apply just as any other organization would.
Yes, sir.
I think the other thing, just as a recollection for the commission, if you recall, the last couple of years, there's been considerable conversation about how the event's grown. We actually talked about at one point, looking to see if we could find an event planner to come in and help and assist with those processes. I think, you know, having this group being willing to bring on the special event into the community, it just creates another opportunity for us as far as tourism is concerned. And so sometimes it always seems as though private organizations can do things a lot differently than government does. I think the Airport Advisory Board has done a great job in getting the recognition for this event with a handful of people. And I think at the end of the day, the board has grown a bit weary in helping. They're willing to assist in providing some of the contacts that we've had historically, but there's an organization that's willing to take the reins and make it a bigger and better event. So, any questions?
I'm all for it. I don't think it's any different than other organizations stepping in and trying to like the Blue Crab. Trying to make like the Blue Crab and those kind of festivals happen. So I'm all for it.
And it will come back up before the commission, it'll be approved. It's a special event. We're a little ahead of ourselves here. Thank you.
And so for the purposes of this item, do we need to entertain a motion on this, or just a motion for us to allow the date to be picked up by any organization?
Yes, sir.
So as a part of it, so we'll entertain a motion at this point for us to vacate the fly-in and allow for private organizations to take over.
Second.
It's a motion on the floor in a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, project update, Mandy Tucker. Sounds like we got a project update earlier.
Yes. Yes, so the project update was distributed along with the agenda and sent out to the commission last week. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions on the projects that you received? Can we just blow it up a little bit for the public? Any particular projects that we want more information on? Or do you want to highlight? Seeing none. The amphitheater project seems to be one that everybody's talking about right now. I guess as far as the groundbreaking, I know you guys are meeting every Monday, is it?
Yes, that is correct.
Any on so somebody's not attending on Monday. So any physical breaking, when is that? When are we looking at that's going to take place?
We are anticipating that some of the electrical will break ground within the next 7 to 10 days. The staking out of the location of the stage should take place within, again, the next 7 to 10 days. There's a red shirt work day where there'll be some site improvements. And I believe that's scheduled for October. I want to say that's the 12th, but I would need to double check that. Hold on just a second.
And that's subject to change based upon the other work items.
Right. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I would also mention that Mr. McLean informed me yesterday that he had received a check for $50,000 from the Rotary Club of Palatka to be used for the amphitheater upgrade.
Yeah, well,
I'm happy to hear that, but I would like that meeting to be placed on my schedule as it was requested at our last meeting when we discussed that, so I can be a part of that planning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be certain that you're included. I apologize.
And so nobody seems to get money like Wayne. Wayne knows how to ask for it. Make Wayne the fundraising emeritus. So again, just kind of, if you can, just send out once you get the final timeline of how you start to push that project, I think everybody's going to be kind of interested, and it's going to be a good opportunity for publicity and partnership. So.
Where did the extra $25,000 come from? The project was awarded $100,000, right?
100 quarter.
Oh,
100. And then he just got another 50. Yeah, Lowe's gave additional.
That was the Lowe's, and
It was original. The original award was 100 they gave, and then they upped it.
Oh,
Yeah.
this one was 25.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's now 175 in the pot.
Still got that short time frame.
All right. Thank you for the updates on the projects. Next up, Mr. Holmes.
Have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Griffith, anything else?
Nothing further, sir.
Ms. Jones?
Nothing, sir.
Salary survey is enough, huh? Ms. Walsh? Chief Taylor?
So as of the middle of September, the fire department has responded to 2,844 calls. 48 of those being fires, one hazmat incident, 2,250 medical calls, 53 hazardous conditions, 106 citizens assist, 212 good intent calls, and 127 fire alarms or false alarms, and then 30 special incidents.
What do you call good intent calls?
Sir?
What are good intent calls?
Good intents when you're going to a call and you, for some reason, get canceled. So either they decide to go by private vehicle or something else. So it was a good intent, but we didn't make it. Okay. Any questions on any of that?
Seeing that, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chief Shaw?
I provided a copy of the statistical data for our NIBRs for you guys. Each of you have a printout. I like to basically focus on our areas of improvement in which we're doing for so far this year. The improvement from 2020 to 2021, an area of violent crime, as you can see, is down 16%. As we discussed previously in other meetings in reference to our UCR NIBR crime numbers, moving to NIBRs next year, we are doing very well in the violent crime areas because we'll be down in -2% as it reflects to NIBRs. Moving to property crime, we are down in -34%, and in UCR area, and moving in NIBRs will be down -21%. Overall, we are down -17% for crime in the area of Palatka. Very proud of those numbers. We are working very hard to ensure that we continue to move forward, especially with the changes over to NIBRs and how it would affect next year. So next year, UCR will be going away and we will be comparing NIBRs to NIBRs.
So The UCR change is 27%.
The UCR change is for overall crime, no, sir, is negative 17%. Where you see the 27% is total other crimes.
Right.
And that's where total other crimes, where it goes up, is where we're beginning to include the small crimes, the misdemeanor crimes, things that wouldn't have been included as of previous years. The crimes, for example, such as narcotics and things like that really aren't categorized. And UCR as part one crimes, they're usually caught up in others and part two.
So when you get the NIBRS change at 33%, how does that play into the whole thing?
So when we look at crimes, NIBRS, UCR only takes that top crime. So for instance, if you have a felony and a misdemeanor, UCR only grabs that number one, that top crime. NIBRS grabs them all. So when we're looking at NIBRS, it is overall. So the 33% increase would be all the crimes included that are documented on that incident. So for the year, everything we've gone up, that would be at 33%, would be going up 33% compared to what we would have been calculating last year to what we'll be calculating next year this time.
But based on the UCR, you're saying the net reduction 17.
That's correct. So last year we did UCR, and as you remember, last year we had an increase in crime. Comparing to what we had from last year to this year in the UCR area, we are at a negative 17%.
So when the numbers hit those areas, and I guess this is the question. So looking at the NIBRS, so you got a NIBRS of 33. The NIBRS change is 33. Is there anything that you do? What adjustments do you make as you start to deal with those numbers changing and the flux? Even though you got a 17% reduction from the UCR side, and NIBRS is showing 33. From a programming standpoint or anything from a COPSI standpoint, what's your adjustment so
as we begin to monitor the crimes, one will say, for example, for motor vehicle theft, for property crimes, as you can see, for motor vehicle theft, it's actually up 3%. We begin to look into each one of those crimes, document the areas at which they occurred, how they happened, and if they have any suspects in common. We then begin to communicate with the county to see if they have something similar in surrounding areas and see if we can develop any patterns. And then we begin to provide procedures or different techniques to eliminate the crime.
Remember the BOLD program over in Gainesville?
Yes.
So are you implementing like any of those strategies? Are you seeing opportunities for those?
That is correct. We're implementing different strategies for different types of crimes, where it may include investigative, where it may include proactive, where it may include strategic partnerships with entities such as our local businesses and stuff like that who are being impacted. So we're using several different techniques, depending on what it is, to be able to access and focus on those crimes.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you also incorporating like services, say for instance, for people who may have repeat crimes or different things of that nature? It may not even have to be a repeat thing, but particular services that could help those individuals, I guess, deal with not having to be rearrested or anything like that, like certain services.
Preventive intervention.
Right. Various.
So we deal with repeat offenders in a couple different manners. Some of you have the drug offender courses that we attend with as well with the county, but working well and tightly with the state attorney's office to identify and to focus on those individuals as far as the repeat offenders, and then in preventive measures, beginning to find different ways to, once people begin to get out of prison, to help make sure they're working well with the reentry programs, to make sure they're finding different jobs and things like that, so that they won't fall into that same pattern to begin to reoffend. Hopefully I'm answering your question, if that's what you're asking.
Well, I mean, you just said get out of prison. I was just talking about like people who are not necessarily going to prison, but just say for instance, you got a person who go to Walmart, steal, the.
Okay, so, yes, sir. So there's programs we have in place. You have the community service hours and different things like that. You have SWAT for the juveniles. We have different programs in place that don't necessarily put them in the system, but allow them to work off said crime and keep them out of the system and keep them in a positive manner. We also work them through PAL. PAL is a big component to getting them back in the community, working with the community, and dealing with preventive measures with not only the juveniles, but the adults as well.
So I think probably a better example is kind of some of the stuff you do. Say we get a kid who finds himself making poor decisions with drugs or whatever, and as opposed to having a state sent him to prison, you kind of help steer him as far as college or some type of career path, military, whatever.
That is correct. And with the PAL program, part of the mentorships and the things we do, follow them guidelines to ensure that we are able to reach out and make a connection with those individuals to get them back on the straight path and provide information such as college and career development.
Right. And one last thing, and just shut down, but the mental health piece in terms of dealing with people who have mental illness when we go to calls and different things of that nature. Are you seeing an increase in those type calls or?
We have seen an increase, and I think one of the things we've reached out to our legal aid in reference to Ms. Val in reference to implementing programs to allow us to address certain things, to not be able to continue to respond to calls of repeat violence or violence on oneself. And that's the RPO program. It's something that we're putting in place right now. We are working on the policies and make sure we have them outlined. We've got direction from Ms. Val, and we are taking care of that, working on that now so we can return that back to her so she can review it and give us approval for implementation.
What's the RPO? Could you expound on that, Chief?
You would have to ask that question.
What's the acronym?
Yeah.
Just give a quick summary.
It's basically individuals who attempt to do violence on others or themselves with use of a weapon or things of that nature, where that they can't continue to do that or can't have access to that weapon, whether it be a firearm or anything like that. We can take into our
protective order.
Thank you. Risk protection order. But you had to ask that question when I lost that.
All right.
And I just have a question. With the crime stats on the homicides. Last year to date, we had 6. 2021, year to date, we had 3. Of the 9, how many arrests have been made on those homicides?
Of the 9 currently, we have 2 that have been arrested, 1 that has an active warrant, and we are in hopes, with our fingers crossed, hoping to, through HIU, to be taking a couple to the Supreme Court. I'm sorry, not the Supreme Court, taking a couple to get indictments on here in the near future, a very near future.
To grand jury.
Grand jury, thank you, sir. Possibly 6, if you ask. I won't know directly until we reach those, the grand jury part.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Any other questions? And so, just so you know, I asked both of the chiefs to give some data for us as we move into the new fiscal year, but also so that citizens can get an idea of some of the programs that are available, some of the things that are happening in the community as a whole. And then as a commission, we're informed of what some of the trends are. So when people start to ask us questions, we can be advocates, and we can also be conduits for information. And so that's one of the reasons that we wanted to push that through. So I definitely appreciate both of you guys getting that information in a pretty quick form.
Mayor, I had a couple of other things I wanted to touch on.
Tuesday.
Just being, we currently an entire shift down. So the guys have been rotating well, working overtime. But I did want to touch on in the last 2 weeks, the job that they are doing. They responded to 1,476 calls for service. And again, that's minus with the swing in for a total shift, pulled over 107 case numbers. And again, it's in a 2-week span, and basically made 31 arrests. Things that you would see on a regular basis. We're not seeing our numbers decrease, and they're working very tirelessly and hard.
Keep making them.
Well, we want.
I thought the object was not to
We
make.
want to make sure we don't have a learning curve. So for things that may not require the arrest, we don't need them up. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you, Chief. Thank you. Anything for Gas Authority? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hey, listen, we appreciate you being here. Definitely. Anything for legal? We can't hear you. Okay. Finance?
No, sir.
Ms. Krantz?
Just one little passing note. We did receive a resignation from a member of the Historic Preservation Board this week.
Okay. Mr. Yule? I think that covers this. Commissioner McCaskill?
No, just want to thank staff and finance for the hard work that they did with the budget this year.
Definitely. Thank you. Commissioner Boyle?
All right, just real quick. Just been appointed to the advocacy committee, and we had our first meeting, and got a little bit of information from it, but I'll share it real quick. The information, the monies that we receive for ARPA, they have a website that you can go to and to see how people or other cities, municipalities spend their money, not only just in Florida, but across the United States. So I sent that link over to Don and Lauren and Sonny, so that they can share with everybody on the commission and the staff. So you can go in and just look at it, and you can filter how you like. But it gives you ways that however they spend that money, you can see how they spent the money, and it can kind of give us an idea. So that's all I had with that. Again, I want to thank the staff for the magnificent and wonderful job that they've done with everything from the budget to the salary survey and everything else. So with that being said, I turn the rest of my time over to the mayor. You want my time?
Nah, I'm gonna pass it up. I'm gonna pass it to Commissioner Jones. Commissioner? Y'all hear that, right?
Yeah, we heard it.
Yeah, okay. All right, I just want to thank staff as well for your continued dedication to making sure that the requests of our commission are fulfilled to the best of your abilities. It does not go unsaid, not to only staff in-house, but to staff in general, those that are taking care of us daily, dumping trash, running sewer, all of those kind of things. Police, fire department, we are eternally grateful, especially in this time of just not being at full capacity with working and being flexible in so many ways. We are eternally grateful for you all. Thank you.
Now it's my turn.
You said you were done.
It's my turn because I didn't want Kimmel to go after me. I truly want to thank the staff, and I want to congratulate you guys for getting the money that you guys you guys definitely deserve it. And we did not want to prolong this process any longer. There was some of this the intricate parts that I didn't like, but I did like seeing you guys get what I feel you all deserve. I want to let you know that.
Only the rookie. So no, in all sincerity, we've had a spirited budget process and salary survey, but the reality is we laugh, we disagree very actively, but it affects lives, it affects families, it affects this community and the direction that we go in. And so I appreciate everybody, from those who've sat in the chairs and given suggestions through public comment, the organizations and everyone else. I did. And I think also just this commission and the amount of time that you put in. One of the things that I didn't talk about, that I didn't bring up this year, and it's something for consideration. And it's hard for you guys to vote for a raise for yourself, but our commission meets just as much as the county commission and the school board and everyone else, and you make half the money. And I wholeheartedly believe that we need to look at the way the structures are set up. We probably meet more than most governmental agencies in this county. And we need to look at the way that stuff is set up, because it takes sacrifice, it takes time, it takes money to do it. And, I truly believe that you guys deserve a raise for what you do, for the commitment that you have. And just to sit here for hours and listen to Commissioner Jones alone is enough for a raise. It's a joke. And so
I was thinking the same thing about you, Mayor.
But no.
Kind of long-winded, Mayor.
But all jokes aside, I think that this commission, we look at it. We've taken care of our employees, and I think it's time that we start to look at in the future, what we do compared to other organizations in this county that make twice as much as you guys make sitting here on this dais. But I honestly, I'm excited about what the future holds, where we're going, the fact that we are having spirited debate about issues that pertain to the city, and we're truly sitting here talking about what happens from a growth perspective. Looking at the projects, looking at where we are, looking at what the chiefs brought forward, it's just good for us. And so, we're on October 5th, the commission gave us a mandate. They gave me direction to go and talk to the county, to talk to the school district. But on October 5th, we're going to present before the school district about Jenkins Middle School and make the request based upon what was put in place. And I'm asking all the commissioners to stand with me on that day as we make the presentation to the school board, as we try to create a city campus. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for the city of Palatka, for the citizens as a whole. And I need you guys standing there with me, because there's no greater influence than the five of us standing together along with our staff, looking to move this community forward and be progressive. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us overall. And then on October 9th, there's another farm share over at Jenkins Middle School. They're looking to, I got a call from Ms. Emma, who actually is one of the farm share coordinators. They're looking to serve 500 families, and they wanted to be sponsored by the city. And so that will start at 8:30 that morning. The heavy lifting is going to start about 7, and I'm hoping that the commissioners will be there as a whole to help out with that.
Was it at 6? I think it was at 6 p.m.
Sir?
I think it's at 6 p.m. Is that time right?
No, that's what the calendar says.
No, it's 6:30 a.m.
Okay, so
6:30 a.m. is when they're kicking off, unloading the semi truck.
Okay.
And then the event will kick off at 8:30.
Sweet. Okay, that makes me feel a lot better, because my lifelong friend from 5th grade, he's got his fiance, and they're having a special occasion, and it's on that same day, and I really want to be able to participate. So I think I'll be able to participate.
Yes, sir. So we'll be there, and so there's the opportunities for that. But so that's some of the stuff that we have in place. We've had the owner of Green Dragon was in town this week, who was really excited about Palatka. And, you're talking 500 jobs with all the things that he's looking to do in Palatka. He was riding, looking at other properties to try to see where he can invest even further in the community. So he's just one of many that have come through this community and really committed resources and opportunity. Every day, it seems like there's a different investor that's coming looking at Palatka and looking at ways that they can build this community up. So we're on track to move this community forward, and we just have to make sure that we're conscious of what we do, because it's going to affect the future of this community and lives. And so with that being said,